I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we will begin tonight, and I will turn it over to our superintendent, Dr. Dolan, to recognize some students and staff here at North Shore.
Absolutely, and wait till you hear what they did. You'll applaud even louder. We have two groups of students we're going to honor tonight, and I'll be mentioning many more as the night goes on. But I'd like to begin by introducing, and what I'm going to do is read this, and then we'll invite the four students to come up together, if that's okay. But tonight, we are going to begin by honoring Mia Krockow, Cindy Gettleman, Erin Schoenhofen, and Abigail Schwab, who are being recognized for volunteering their time to work with students on their Red Ribbon Writing Contest submissions. In their capacity as North Shore High School Writing Fellows, Abigail, Sydney, Erin, and Mia pushed into high school English classes and conferenced with their peers as they composed their poems. Leading by example, these four writing fellows promoted healthy decisions through the use of creative writing. Their enthusiastic efforts engaged our students in supporting prevention, awareness, and solidarity with those struggling with substance abuse. Erin's, Abigail's, Sydney's, and Mia's participation promoted CASA's meaningful initiative and facilitated their peers' capacity to leverage creative writing as a means of processing their thoughts, synthesizing their ideas, and constructing an evolving understanding. They helped our students express their emotions, and through the act of writing, made their endorsement of healthy coping skills visible and permanent. We would like to thank Julie Ritter, who could not make it tonight, as I understand it, who nominated these students and assisted with it. I don't know if a faculty advisor is here tonight or not, but I would at this time like to invite up Mia, Sydney, Erin, and Abigail to receive our thanks and a plaque. If it's okay, we'll do this the same way. I'm going to read something, and then we'll ask all of the students who I mentioned to come on up. We have some football awards, unsurprisingly, and after the season we had, it should certainly be no surprise that many of our individual players received awards at the end of the year. These are awards I've certainly never heard of a student receiving. In my years, I've never been able to award a student something for this. The Newsday All Long Island team members are awarded by Newsday sports writers, and the New York State team members are awarded by the New York State Sport Writers Association. This year, 4 North Shore High School football team members were awarded the distinctions as follows. Reese Ramos. First team Newsday All Long Island and first team All New York State. Nicholas La Rosa, first team All New York State. Dan Quigley, Second team, Newsday All Long Island, and second team, All New York State. And David Berlin, All New York State Honorable Mention. What I'd like to ask those four gentlemen to do is to come on up and be joined by Newsday's Long Island Coach of the Year, Dan Agavino.
All right, just as they're finding their seats, just one more round of applause for all of our students and athletes tonight. We'd like to move on to the approval of the minutes from January 20th, 2022. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And I heard a second as well. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye, thank you. Action item 5, which is the approval of the treasurer's report from November of 2021. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second, great. Any questions or comments on this?
A quick one.
Please.
I appreciated the cash flow report in this, in particular on the treasurer's report. It really spoke to the business office's work on managing the timing and the amount of our tax anticipation notes. Like in hindsight, it's very obvious that without that, in October, we've had a very significant cash flow shortfall. So thank you for managing the TANs so accurately. And it looks like, too, that if we're talking about cash flow come April, you hit the same kind of difficult point if the tax payments for the towns were delayed in any way. So I wanted to mention that because there is the town of Oyster Bay in particular has been talking about asking for a delay in tax payments, which we know affected us in the past. So thank you for your stewardship on that, Olivia.
We'll start preparing for it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments on the treasurer's report? All right, all in favor of its approval? Aye. Thank you. Action 6, which are budget transfers. Is there a motion? And a second? Thank you. Questions or comments? All in favor of approval? Aye. Action 7, the report from our superintendent, Dr. Dolan.
Thank you. This was not high enough. Can people hear me now?
Just for the mics, you want for some reason they're directional, so you got to have it pointed directly at you.
I will do my best.
That sounds good to me. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you to everyone for being here tonight. The focal point of the meeting tonight is the presentation of a proposed budget for the school year, the next school year. And I hope that everyone can and will stay for that. Because of the length of that section of the meeting, I will try to be a little bit more brief than I usually am in my report. Let me start with the topic that has been on the forefront for this entire year. the COVID epidemic and the challenges associated with it. I will start with the good news. As a region and a state, we appear to be headed in the right direction. Our numbers are vastly improved, and the very scary days of early January, when we evaluated our ability to stay open on an almost daily basis, are past us. It continues to be my hope that we complete this school year in a way that will look like the end of all other school years that we recall, except the last two. Now, the challenges. I fully acknowledge that this current circumstance has been divisive. That saddens me. Last Tuesday, that was emphasized by a back and forth between wearing masks and not wearing masks, based on the interpretation of the law on a moment-by-moment basis. Please note that our decisions relied on the law, and I acted upon the advice of counsel. The district shall continue to do so. At present, there is still a mask mandate in schools, and it is scheduled to expire on February 21st. If it is not renewed, that means the district will have some decisions to make. And I'd like to advise the community on how that will occur and when we will be in a position to share our plan. I look forward to working with the central office administrators and principals next week to explore what a post-mandate school might look like and how we will welcome students back on February 28th, the day that we return from the February break. I will develop some recommendations, share them with the Board of Education, and a re-entry plan will be announced and discussed at the February 17th meeting of the board. By then, it will be clearer whether the mandate is being continued, and our decisions can be grounded in that current circumstance. By discussing it on the 17th, it will also allow for the community to be informed, to be involved in that discussion, and prepare for any changes should they be in place. I've also heard concerns about the need for advocacy around this issue, and I assure you that it does take place. The New York State School Boards, which represents the board here tonight and to which they belong, has been very outspoken, and they have sent communications to the state. My own organization, the New York State Council of School Superintendents, has written to the Department of Health just today. And the letter that they sent, and that the president of the organization shared with me, stated the following. Just going to read one paragraph. Students in New York and across the country have experienced a roller coaster 23 months as they have gone from remote education to hybrid to almost universal in-person learning that is interrupted by periodic quarantines of students and staff. We believe we have now reached the time when the state needs to transition schools out from a pandemic learning environment. We don't know what that's going to look like, but my organization certainly is hopeful that we will receive feedback quickly and directly. Finally, on this topic, I remind everyone that we are still well-stocked on test kits that the governor has sent, and they are still available to parents in all of our buildings. I think we established a schedule that makes them readily available in all 5 of our buildings. If you need one, please stop by. And I'd like to thank John Ahern and the security staff, who many of whom are here tonight, who assisted with distributing those test kits. Thank you very much. I'm advised that when the ones that we have are gone, there will be more available, and I'll be speaking about that topic again later. I also have 2 buildings and grounds updates, and they're similar to updates I've offered before, at least in terms of the locale. The Glenwood Landing vestibule has certainly been difficult to complete. As of today, the doors are experiencing more delays, the doors themselves for the exterior of the building, and the door hardware delivery was delayed again. All entities involved are trying to get materials and move the vestibule doors to the head of the production. Our goal is to make the February break the install date, and it's currently unknown whether they will be here by then or not. On the positive side, Mr. Doyle moved into the new security booth at the beginning of the week. John Hall is on this project, and we speak about it frequently, and I know of its special importance to John as he is a graduate of the Glenwood Landing School. John Hall loves all of our schools, I assure you, but he's paying attention to this project. The Glenhead sinkhole. Temporary fence was installed around the entire work site. Our security was removed. It is no longer needed. The contractor has not yet committed to a start date because of the weather conditions, the snow of last weekend, and the way it's impacted the work schedule and other jobs. Conditions at our site need to be favorable because of the nature of the work. Mr. Hall reports that a start date will be reported as soon as it is known, and the contractor is aware of the urgency to get this work started. On a different topic, I'm very pleased to report that the Community Budget Forum met last week. Olivia, Dr. Zublionis, and I led them through Budget Boot Camp. We had a good presentation and discussion on how a school budget is built, some of our special challenges, and how we hope to proceed this year. I thank the community members who participated, and Olivia and I will be in touch with them after tonight's budget presentation, on how to proceed. Earlier tonight, we honored several students, including some athletes, but I'd like to, if you'll allow me, offer a winter sports update, because we've had several accomplishments this winter in the sports realm. For example, I hope I don't leave anybody out. Wrestling, conference champions, third conference championship in a row. Girls basketball, undefeated in the conference, looking for the #1 seed in the playoffs. First playoff game will be February 17th at home. Congratulations to Morgan Griffin on scoring her 1,000th career point. I happened to be at that game, and it was absolutely delightful to see the way that the team celebrated Morgan's accomplishment. And I congratulate Coach Freund for the way that he coordinated that also with the other team. Men's basketball, first place, 1 win away from the conference championship. Senior day this Saturday, 12 noon. First playoff game, this is positive thinking, will be either February 16th or 18th, depending on the seating at home. Women's winter track and field. This happens all the time, I'm told. Conference champions again. The following girls won their own individual races. Emma Dulaski in the 3,000 meter, Madeline Bush in the 1,000 meter, Fiona Regan in the 600 meter, and Louisa Ludmore in the race walk. They will be competing for the Nassau County Championship on February 7th. Men's track and field placed second in the conference championships. Conference champions were Aiden Stolberger in the 55 meter, Sam Sturge in the 1,600 meter, and the 4x200 featuring Aiden Stolberger, Gabe Kopsek, Albert Bergman, and Michael Yee, and they will be competing for the Men's Nassau County Championship on February 7th. And as a former coach of this sport, I was particularly happy to see that our men's bowling team finished the season ranked 12th out of 48 schools in the Nassau County in total average. Good job. Congratulations to that team as well. Almost done. Finally, I would like to update the community on the progress of our search for the next principal of North Shore Middle School. The window for applications is open until February 18th. On the day we posted our first ad, we did so at about noon, and when we checked at 5 o'clock that afternoon, we already had 3 applicants. At present, there are over 50 applications received, and we will begin screening them. The screening process will begin in March. We will be involving community members and staff members in the interview process in late March and April, and there will be much more news on that item to follow, I assure you. I have one last item, but I'm going to wait until I'm down in the pit because it's a video I'd like to share with you before I start the budget presentation, and in the interest of time, I'll end there, but I will be back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Next up is a report, an update from me on the superintendent search, which is very brief. We have cast a very wide net. We have advertised, we have sent out over 1,000 letters. We have had our consulting firm who's helping us with the search reach out to many folks. The applications are due February 6th, which is this weekend, at which point we will have them call the different folks that have applied, and within about a month or so, begin presenting some semifinalists to our attention. So that's the update on that. We're on schedule, hoping to have an appointment this spring. And with that, we turn it over to the report from our 2 SGO reps, Noah and Katie.
All right, good evening. Is that working over here?
It's on. Just make sure the little volume knob is to the right.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. It is very nice to be back in person with all of you after the last few virtual meetings. We'd of course like to start by congratulating the various students and coach who were awarded tonight. And while I unfortunately cannot attend the last meeting as I was competing in the track conference championship, I am very proud to reiterate what Dr. Dolan said, that the girls team did place first in the conference and our boys team placed second at that meet. And while Dr. Dolan gave a winter sports update, so I will spare you all the details. Again, our winter sports season is going incredibly well for all of our sports, and as many of our teams advance to the playoffs and county championships, we wish everyone the best of luck and are hopeful that the Vikings will bring home a variety of awards in the coming months.
The SGO met this morning in preparation for Valentine's Day. We will be purchasing decorations for the school as part of our ongoing initiative to lift morale and create a stronger community at the high school. We will also be sponsoring a series of spirit days for Valentine's Day and St. Patrick's Day. Our senior play last week was a great success. Everyone that attended seemed to be having a great time and enjoyed all the jokes, and everyone who participated also had a great time.
Our senior IB diploma candidates are in the process of completing their Viva Voces, the verbal reflections on their extended essays to their supervisor. And additionally, the senior cohort of diploma candidates ended their TOK class this week, Theory of Knowledge. The juniors are just beginning their journey. And from one diploma candidate to the rest of the junior class, I hope that they have as positive of an experience with the Theory of Knowledge class as I did.
As several important dates come upon us, North Shore has taken the initiative to recognize them. On Monday, Mandarin students and teachers organized a small school celebration of the Chinese New Year by handing out little envelopes to students. Also, the Science Honor Society created posters today to highlight women and people of color in STEM occupations, which will be hung around the school. It is very nice to see everyone celebrating our differences and coming together as one. Thank you all and have a great evening.
Thank you both. Really appreciate it. Obviously, you're welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to head home as well. That was a great report. You really inaugurated the return to live meetings very, very well, guys. Thank you. Thank you. With that, we turn to our regular business, which is the budget presentation from Dr. Dolan on behalf of the administration. I just wanted to preface that by saying that we obviously discuss many, many, many topics here from this board, but this budget is the driver of everything that we do, and certainly among the most important responsibilities of this board. Tonight, the administration is going to present their recommended 2022-2023 budget to the community and board, with the Board of Ed reviewing and asking questions in front of everyone transparently and publicly so we can get the real information here. This is one of 3 sessions, along with February 17th and March 3rd, before we adopt a final version of the budget on March 24th, at which point it becomes the board's budget to be voted on by the community. So I want to thank you for being here tonight and watching our live stream. I want to I think that's Elliot up there. And I want to thank you for setting this all up at this location. The middle school production of Footloose is taking up the stage in the high school, so we had to pivot and use this really cool building with which I'm not terribly familiar, but I like this space, so I'm glad we're here. Yeah. So tonight we are going to just lay the groundwork out. We're going to have a presentation from Dr. Dolan, which is with a PowerPoint. Trustees will then be asking questions of the PowerPoint. We will then redirect to the enrollment and revenue projections for further discussion and go through our books. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Dolan. Thank you.
The presentation begins with a PowerPoint, and I'm going to ask the board to come on down into the audience and have a seat in the first couple of rows. I'm going to come down there. We're going to lower a screen in just a minute and start with an entertaining video and then move on to a PowerPoint presentation, which will offer an overview and a lot of history on the budget, and I think it will kick it off well. We'll be with you in 1 minute, just so this gets set up. Okay, we're going to begin with a word from our sponsors. Not really our sponsors as much as those who we sponsor. This is not part of the budget presentation, and I would have done it as part of my report, but we would have been in the way. So there we go. I do hear the difference. So if you will, I'd like you to enjoy a little preview of our middle school musical, which will be this Friday and Saturday. Please consider coming down to see it. And hope you'll enjoy this little snippet of the North Shore Middle School musical, Footloose. So I did not know that we'd be showing that just as I started to talk about the budget, but it certainly seems appropriate. It's a great way to remind everybody of what the budget is about and what the budget supports. I'm trying to get a light on here. There we go. And that's what we'd like to present now. This is going to be an overview of this very specific budget. It's going to give you a lot of information, but there are several sessions where we'll be talking about the budget. If you take a look at the document, you have a question later on, we'll be back. I'll be back another meeting in February and a couple of meetings in March to answer all of your questions and to develop community support around the budget. We want you to know what's going on. Before I begin, there's a classic case of being able to take the teacher out of the classroom, but never taking the classroom out of the teacher. And the social studies teacher in me, whenever I begin a budget presentation, is reminded of a law that was passed in 1647 in Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, in colonial Massachusetts, they knew the importance of schools. They knew the importance of children learning how to read. And because it was so important, they established that you were not allowed to establish a town in Massachusetts. No charter was issued unless the community agreed that they would build and support a school. That is, the school made the community. No school, no community. And dating all the way back to that, that's much of what this is about. This is the only budget I know that people get to vote on. This is the only budget I know that we do multiple presentations on, entertain questions, ask questions, and that it's an iterative process where the board certainly plays a role, and so does the community. This is your budget. And for now, it's my budget, which you've heard me say this about Superintendent's Conference Day. To call this the superintendent's budget right now is a little bit of a misnomer because of all the work done by the assistant superintendent. The work you see before you is because of the very, very hard and capable and the talent of one Olivia Boazzi, who has served this district well for almost 2 decades, who knows this place and has supported kids who have long since graduated from this school. And she and her assistant, Lois Straber, have worked tirelessly on these documents. And I'd like to thank her publicly and commend her for all that she's done over the last, I believe, 17 years on behalf of the district. Olivia, thank you. So a budget is a plan, and that's what we propose tonight. This is a plan for next year and how we will manage next year. But like any plan, you have to start with an understanding of some of the parameters of that plan. And behind me, you see what the district goals were in developing this budget. I will read them to you, though I know you can read behind me very well, but I will comment on a couple of them. To remain sensitive to the physical pressures faced by the residents of the North Shore community. To reduce costs and, this is important, seek other revenue sources. I think you know I've worked in a couple of places. I've been superintendent in a couple of places. I know of no district that does a better job of talking about the revenue side of the budget. I'll come back to that. And also trying to develop revenue. To continue to align all instructional programs with the district's shared value outcomes, the SVOs, and the strategic plan. That's a vibrant and living document that we do follow, and we talk about a great deal more than you might think. To maintain all existing programs and resources while meeting the new and evolving needs of students. Maintaining might sound like a low standard, but as I share with you tonight, some of the very unique challenges to this budget next year, but challenges that are probably going to confront your households as well sooner or later, you'll see that maintaining every single program in this district for next year is actually a signal accomplishment. To continue to strengthen academic support to bridge learning loss due to the pandemic, going on 24 months now. Think about it, we call it COVID-19. 2019. We've been dealing with this for a long time, and we've had kids stretched out over 3 years of their education. We acknowledge our need to address that. To commit to the wellness of students, faculty, and staff by continuing to provide mental health support. Continue outdoor learning programs and provide adequate security to protect students when learning outside the classrooms. Just today, one of our principals, Jeanette Wojcik, led our district architect. I don't know who led who, but the district architect was here looking for new opportunities for outdoor education all across the district. To provide a strong program of professional development to our faculty and staff, and to enhance teaching and learning. Continuing to provide a robust network infrastructure and technology to support teaching and learning, as well as secure the district's data. That as well sounds like it's almost an afterthought, but securing district data is critically important, and I'm sure you've heard of even neighboring districts who've had data plundered and have had a number of difficulties because they did not protect their data. Upgrading existing infrastructure to support new and emerging technologies, and finally, to maintain our facilities and to provide a safe and healthy learning environment for our faculty and staff. That's an extensive list. That's a difficult list, but it's one that I believe we have measured up to, with a number of unknowns. There's a lot of unknowns in building this budget. There's a lot of things we don't know about. And if we haven't learned that in the last 2 years, I don't know what we've learned. The first challenge, to prepare a nimble budget to adapt to the impact of the pandemic. And when I say to the impact of the pandemic, we also have to adapt to whatever that next challenge is. We don't know what that next challenge is, but it needs to be a budget that is prepared to move and to be nimble and to address whatever concern, whatever new problem we confront. Well, I made it to page 4 before I mentioned this, but challenge number 2, the impact of the LIPA settlement on resources and district residents. I acknowledge that you've been hearing about that for a number of years. In a couple of slides, I'll demonstrate to you for how long the district has been talking about and preparing for it. But it is a question of when, not a question of if, there will be a change, we think, in the tax base. And that's something that we need to be prepared for and that I will be prepared to speak to you tonight about. The challenge number 3, long-term state resources available to school districts. This year, there was a vast increase in state aid. You'll see we didn't benefit quite as much as some other districts that you may have read about, but we did go up, and we're very thankful for that and very appreciative. But you never know how long that's going to continue. The ability to provide state aid is certainly tied to the state's fiscal health, and that's somewhat unpredictable, as are state politics. Challenge 4, the impact of inflation on the cost of goods and services. Now we're up to current events. We're hearing a great deal about inflation. We're hearing a great deal about prices going up. We don't have to hear about it. We're seeing it when we go into the store, when we pull into the gas station. Inflation is having an effect on your pocketbook. It's having an effect on ours. And it's also having an effect on the availability of services, of goods. And finally, the impact of labor shortage on construction costs and collective bargaining. For the first time in my life, I am reading news stories about teachers leaving the profession and being recruited to other fields. That's been in the news within the last 72 hours. We have not had that problem, I'm very happy to say, but we are having issues with other positions. Civil service positions are difficult to fill, in part because civil service has fallen a little bit behind on tests. But certainly filling positions and a shortage of employees out there has been a predicament for us. Those are 2 new variables that, as I said, I would label as current events because they are confronting us for the very first time. So how was the budget developed? The superintendent of schools met with the administrative team to discuss the district's goals and assumptions. That was way back in October. Administrators were asked to formulate zero-based budget proposals based upon that document I referred to a minute ago, the district's SVOs and the strategic plan, and to tie the initiative to prior year's plans to show the progression in student work. That is, if we're proposing something, let's make sure it's linked to something we've done before. But if it is something brand new, let's make sure that we continue it. Administrators are required to consider students' learning loss, including engagement and mental health. Again, both of those tied to the events of the last 23 months. To incorporate mandated costs and district's obligations under each and every collective bargaining agreement. We reviewed actual expenditures for the past 5 years, and just today a question was raised about the budget history that might be available to people. It's there, it's right on our district website, and it has been. We did rearrange the website so that we thought it would be more user-friendly, but if you look on our budget information page, right down at the bottom of the page, there's a big maroon box that says, click here for past budget information. I did that, I tested it. I don't want to give you that advice and find out it wasn't working, but that does work. It's easy to find. Let us know if you need help, but all the past budget information is there. Never disappeared, just rearranged. Review our health and safety protocols and related facilities needs. Again, pandemic related, and otherwise related as well. Review trends to project healthcare and other employee benefit costs. We'll be talking about that quite a bit tonight. And finally, formulate a budget, write a narrative to tie together the SVO's strategic plan, and provide a roadmap for the future of each department. I've already offered Olivia 1 bouquet, but I am going to give her 1 more tonight, because in those meetings that we held with all of our administrators, with Dr. Zublionis, Olivia and I met with every chairman and every director and every principal. And Olivia, unlike some business officials I know, greeted every single idea with great knowledge about the district, knowing how it tied into what had been done in the past, knowing the people, knowing the personnel, and was encouraging about them. Business officials are not always encouraging about ideas that cost money. In some districts, the business official is called Dr. No. Not here. Here, Olivia was encouraging and helpful and wants to see an academic program grow just as much as I do, just as much as Dr. Zublionis does. And that was refreshing, and I thank her for that approach. So, at a glance, these are the big numbers. Our budget-to-budget increase. As you may or may not know, our budget last year, $111,641,000 and 18 odd dollars. Last year, the proposed budget was, this year, the proposed budget goes up to $115,964,000 for a total budget increase of $4,323,163.48, an increase of 3.872%. That's the budget. Now, I could, I guess, call one of the members of the Community Budget Forum up here and see what kind of a job we did and ask them to talk about the difference between that and the tax levy, but I'll do it. The tax levy, unlike the budget, the tax levy is the amount of money that we need to raise. So you will note that while our budget is $111 million, we need only raise $92,337,256 because there are other revenue sources that account for that $21 million or so dollars difference. Therefore, when we talk about the tax levy increase, that is what the actual impact on your pocketbook, on your real estate taxes will be. Our tax levy is going up to $96,644,364.44. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Don't want to. If I'm going to say a number, I'm going to say it too low, not too high. Our tax levy this year will be proposed $94,644,364.44 for an increase of $2,307,108. The tax levy increase is 2.499, which is within the 2% tax cap. I know that doesn't sound like it makes sense, but the 2% tax cap in New York State is called the 2% tax cap, but is actually determined by a somewhat complex formula based on a variety of variables that we can tie in. Pilots, indebtedness, various factors that will change that 2% for inflation, that will change that 2%. So it was both interesting and frustrating when I saw that Newsday headline about a month ago that said, tax cap will be 2% this year. Yes, that's where we start the formula. When we completed our formula, our tax cap, the North Shore tax cap is 2.499. That is our cap, and we are going up to the top of the cap, which benefits us again next year because one of the items in that complex formula when you determine the tax cap is the degree to which you used the full tax cap the previous year. So it actually incentivizes using that full amount. So we are within the tax cap. Now there is a $21 million difference between our budget and our tax levy, and I will explain that in great depth later on. Where are we spending the money? If it's this slide, and it is, you'll see a comparison from year to year. General support went up minimally from $10,000,003 up to $10,400,000, 1.21% increase. Instruction did go up by about 2.36%, $1.5 million appropriately. Pupil transportation going up 6%, $167,135. Community service staying the same. Employee benefits, we're going to spend some time talking about, because you will note, while it's only a 6.99% increase, that's because it's already a pretty big number. And in fact, our employee benefit line is increasing this year by $1,926,928.94. I will specify what exactly those employee benefits are in just a minute, and I think some of it will sound very familiar to many of you. Finally, while it goes up 10%, it's not as much money. The debt service, tax anticipation, and bond anticipation notes, goes up about $500,000 or 10.96%. So again, that is the entire budget. So that 3.872 increase matches that budget increase because all of those numbers add up to the full budget and the full increase of $4,323,163. But I need to spell out some of those in much greater detail, especially the first item. When I've spoken about employee benefits before, I am reminded of the line, there is no such thing as a free lunch, nor is there such thing as a free pandemic. And I think the things that the government has done have been remarkable and admirable, and I'm glad they did things like free masks and free vaccines, a number of the things that they did that were not charged to people. But the insurance companies did have to pay for them, and now, just as the cost will be passed along to private health insurance holders, our insurance plan is going up quite a bit, our health insurance plan. The health insurance increase this year, and this is a bill we receive. This is not something we invite. This is not something that's negotiable. The increase in our health insurance this year is $1,407,000. A huge increase compared to previous years, and just within the context of a $150 million budget, for something to go up 1% on one line item that, again, is not negotiable. This is, we received the health insurance bill from New York State. They tell us what the price is, and we must pay it. Similarly, the teacher retirement system that we contribute to, and all of our teachers contribute to, and now, because of recent changes in legislation, our teachers contribute to for their entire career. Our TRS bill went up $538,693,066. Again, that's the bill. That is not something we can bid out. That is not something we negotiate. That is what we are told we owe. And finally, now the federal government comes along. Social Security and Medicare have gone up, including a change in the formula for the way that we pay for retirees' health insurance to the tune of $367,882. ERS, the employee retirement system, actually went down $400,000, a little over $400,000, but the net increase of $1,926,928 is the largest driver of this budget, and is not something that we can nibble away at. There is no way that we can lower that cost. Instruction is going up also. That one I am way more proud of than employee benefits. Instruction, and that is something that we have added to by way of adding some positions that I'll get to in just a minute, and also contractual increases to the tune of $1,142,507, up 26%. And then some smaller numbers. Supervision of instruction, that is the administrators who organize the district, has gone up $415,562. One very important wrinkle to recognize there is that in last year's budget, a position was cut for the elementary education assistant director. The board wisely determined this year to add that position back. And in fact, Amy McGee, yes, I got their last name right, good, I knew it was Amy. Amy starts next Tuesday. We're very pleased at that. But Amy's salary was not in the budget, was added to this year's budget, and therefore is an up to next year's budget of approximately $150,000. Now, this is stuff I've been dying to talk about. In a few minutes, you're going to hear about an innovation that we are proposing here in the North Shore School District that I don't think any other school district, at least in Nassau County, is talking about. And that is, we'd like to begin the infrastructure for electric bus charging stations, electric buses, and the ability to charge those buses. $350,000 to start. That is half the cost that we need. That will be a 2-year project. But we hope that before this budget cycle is done, that we will have attracted other funding to make it possible to achieve this entire purpose. And you're going to hear a lot more about that electric bus initiative tonight, including a very exciting video. Transportation in general, up $167,135. And I have to editorialize about transportation. Many of my superintendent colleagues, during the months of September, October, and November, began their day by having a conversation with their bus companies. And according to one of them, he said the conversation started with, okay, here's the buses that won't run today. Here's the buses that won't run today. So you get on the phone, you get on the internet, you let parents know, at 6 o'clock, let them know that that bus they're waiting for at 7 won't be there. We never had that problem because we have our own bus garage, we have our own bus fleet, we have our own bus drivers, and we have an incredibly talented Michelle Hall who organizes all of those efforts. Our transportation department is really one of the jewels in the crown of the North Shore School District. And several years ago, when the district decided to build a bus garage, we could not possibly have known how many districts would be confronting the problems they had this year that we did not. And finally, all other debt service and school lunch, $321,029. As you'll note in blue up there, that includes a transfer to the school lunch fund because that is in part federally funded and we are not allowed to run a deficit in the school lunch fund. Therefore, we have to transfer some money in there this year to make sure that it's balanced. So a graphic on the budget drivers, and you'll see that big one over on the gray, employee benefits, certainly taking a big bite out of the total budget, but that red one, instruction, that is also taking a big bite. Because while we may have to pay some of those other bills, the ones that are within our purview, the ones that are within our choice, instruction and supervision of instruction and the electric bus stations, they're more important statistically and morally. And we're spending way more in terms of the increase there than we are in that other very big category. All right, some of the budget drivers. Certainly, salary is one of them. You'll see there salaries in 21-22, approximately $65 million, going up this year to $66,606,965, an increase of 3.32%, or about $2 million. You'll see at the bottom what percentage of the budget that represents, and it's actually slightly down in terms of the total budget picture. But note that we are a people-driven industry. We are heavily reliant on people, teachers, aides, monitors, principals. Those are what we rely upon to deliver services. While other industries may invest solely in machinery, we invest in people. And that is why way back on slide 2, we talk about professional development to the degree that we do. We bring people in, we hire them, we take good care of them, and there are a lot of them. And we'll be talking about that in the budget presentation later. There is some new staffing in this budget. If you remember, I said how proud I was that we were able to maintain all program, and we are. But there are some increases, some new staff that we are hiring. As I noted, the first one, the $150,000 to reinstate the elementary director of special education. Very proud of that. And in regular instruction, we've always built in some wiggle room in the event that a grade, a school, a class becomes larger than we had anticipated at the elementary level. This year, we're only budgeting one elementary teacher for enrollment growth. That is a July and August phone call that takes place when, gee, it looks like we've gone up a little bit. Can we do this? Can we do that? This year, it's going to be a little bit tighter. This year, it's going to be a little bit harder because we only have that one position. Sometimes you don't use it at all. Sometimes you use all of them that you have budgeted, but we do have one. One other increase, one other enhancement is that we're going to be increasing the theater position at the middle school, high school, from a part-time position to a full-time position. Aaron Braitman, the gentleman who has that position, has done a wonderful job this year. But more important than that, we feel a need for our students to enhance that program and make sure that we have other theater opportunities for students. That will also allow us to attract more students, believe it or not, because occasionally we have a student who expresses a desire to go to a nice school, the Long Island High School for the Arts, and they sometimes go there for the theater program. We think we're going to be able to build a theater program that matches that. And certainly being able to keep a student here and not on a bus for 2 hours a day and here with their colleagues, their friends that they've grown up with, they might find that an enhancement. But to make it a true enhancement, I need to offer them a program, and we will be able to do that. In special education, there is one full-time position for the integrated co-teaching at the elementary class for a rising 5th grade to reduce class size. That is, we need another section of that. And also a 0.4, what we mean by 0.4 is 40% of a full-time teaching position. 0.4 ILC, Intensive Learning Center. And again, that's due to the expansion of the ILC program at the high school. So 0.4, usually the equivalent of about 2 periods a day that will be increasing. So even with the challenges in this budget, we have identified areas that we needed to address, and we have. And lease and infrastructure for electric vehicles. We propose to swap 6 large diesel school buses for electric school buses. Swap? Swap? I mean, wouldn't that be great if you could just swap? Well, in this case, we can because the district has contracted with McBride Consulting to write grants to secure funding to swap up to 6 diesel buses for electric vehicles. A new electric bus is estimated to cost $150,000 after incentives, which we'll talk about in a minute. The district could receive up to $200,000 in grant incentives due to our location. Intriguingly, because of where the district is, we have some opportunities that other districts do not. About $120,000 is budgeted to purchase new buses every year in line with the district's school bus replacement schedule. This funding will be used to offset the cost of the lease for these electric vehicles. Rather than purchasing, we're going to lease them. And there's already been some changes proposed in state legislation that will make that even easier. But it will be foolish to buy electric buses and not be able to charge them. These require more than an extension cord. In fact, we will need to upgrade the electrical service at the bus depot to 480 volts, install charging stations, and add extra conduits for future expansion. It's estimated the electrical upgrade and charging stations will be approximately $603,000. This project will be phased, as of now, over 2 years. The 2022-23 budget includes $350,000 for the infrastructure. All incentives received will be used to offset the inflation costs. And I assure you that Olivia and I are not done seeking those incentives and talking to elected officials, who I'll speak about in just a minute, to get the rest of that money such that we can do this in 1 year. It's possible. It's a stretch, but it's possible. Thus far, we have budgeted half of the money. We are aggressively looking for funding sources, and we've received some very good feedback already. So I said location, that it was based on location. That's because the district is located near a disadvantaged community. According to our grant specialist, any bus route that touches any part of the disadvantaged community could qualify for up to $200,000 in grant funding. Some of the district's buses are routed through the roads in these communities, and you can see up there the local map of where those disadvantaged communities are. We are contiguous to them, and we can route buses such that they would be eligible for that incentive. The bigger map, all of Long Island, you'll see there's not a lot of disadvantaged communities in Nassau and Suffolk, according to this formula, but there are a few. And you'll see that we are the one up in the way you're looking at it, the upper left-hand corner, that item that kind of juts out into the water. Why electric school buses? A lot of great reasons. Revenue generation. The district could generate income by entering into an intermunicipal agreement to permit other districts, municipalities to charge their vehicles at the bus depot. Right now, we do have IMAs with East Williston and Locust Valley School District to service and perform Department of Transportation inspection on their school buses. That's actually a source of revenue for the district. We charge them, they pay us. We could do the same thing with electric buses. And we might be the only one who could do that for a while. Now, this is amazing. The 2022 New York State executive budget includes a proposal that all newly purchased school buses be zero emission by 2027, and that all school buses on the road have zero emissions by 2035. There's only one kind of bus that has zero emissions, and that's electric. We are pushing towards an all-electric fleet in New York State, and not just school buses. There's a push right now to make sure that every vehicle that the state owns, trucks and trailers and tractors, all the things they own, snow plows, are all electric within the next 10 to 15 years. But 2027 is when we must purchase buses that are zero emission. That's right around the corner. The proposal above allows for state transportation aid on leased and purchased zero-emission buses, charging stations, and related equipment. Districts right now are permitted to lease school buses for, right now we're allowed to lease for 5 years, but there's a proposal before the state that will allow us to lease them for 10 years. We hope that happens, but if it doesn't, we're prepared to enter into the 5-year lease. The 10-year lease would make it even more attractive. It's estimated that each electric bus costs around $150,000 after incentives. Diesel buses cost $120,000 at the time of purchase, but the school district will pay $170,000 to $240,000 more in lifetime fuel and maintenance costs for the diesel model. And we will demonstrate that to you in just a minute, just exactly what those costs are. Why electric school buses? Zero emissions. Electric vehicles produce zero emissions. If we want to make a statement about the environment, and clearly New York State does, we should follow. This will help other vulnerable students and drivers, as you'll hear in a minute, with respiratory issues. And then there's a vehicle-to-grid capability. Again, this is a revenue source. When the bus is charged and goes back into the bus garage at the end of the day, if it still has charge in its bus, it can be sold back to the grid. Right now, you can sell the excess charge back to LIPA and receive revenue for that. Unused power gets drawn back into the power grid. And now, we have a video that we'd like to share with you that might reiterate some of the things that I've just said, but I assure you it does it in a much more entertaining way.
Keystone of the 2022-23 North Shore School budget is a project that I'm really proud to talk to the community about tonight and in the future. We plan to start one of the very first electric bus fleets in Nassau County, recognizing that the days of the diesel bus are almost over. We are told that within the next 5 to 7 years, diesel buses will no longer be available, and when they are no longer available, electric buses will be taking their place. On the way down here.
So you said you drove from Saratoga to Bayshore. And how long is that? It's about 220 miles. And how many charges are there? One charge. About 3 hours.
It's just unbelievable the difference because, driving the big bus, you have so many things going on, the sound, the kids, it can be a little overwhelming. And this is a complete game changer. It really is. The safety issue alone with the sound. I mean, I feel like I can hear a pin drop here right now. The difference is very quiet.
A number of circumstances led us to this. One of them is that we happen to live in an environmentally disadvantaged zone. There's been a considerable amount of damage done to the environment locally, and as a result, there are some incentives available to us to allow us to purchase these buses at a vastly reduced cost.
The ACs are really nice serving our communities which have had prolonged instances of pollution within the community of various types. They can be things within the community around, can be seepage from power plants that have been producing in the community for many decades. So what the state has done is that they've allowed for any route, any school bus route that touches any part of a disadvantaged community within your school district to be eligible for $200,000 of funding up to a total of $1.8 billion of available funding. So that would allow you to go after 9 buses at the full $200,000 rate, which should bring the cost of a similarly equipped electric bus that you would be going after, a large bus, closer to the normal price you would be paying for it.
To be clear, North Shore School District boundaries is not a disadvantaged community. So what you are saying is that any of our bus routes touches a disadvantaged community, that also qualifies us for the $200,000 funding. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, my understanding is absolutely correct. And we've proven that through previous awards, prior to our engagement, where Randstad have specifically and in very, in a lot of cases, maybe touched within the disadvantaged community 2 or 3 times within their route, got the full $200,000 funding.
We plan to lease 6 buses next year to replace 6 buses in our fleet. And those electric buses will really be the pride of the North Shore bus fleet.
I have to say, once you get used to it, like you don't want to go back to the diesel. Now, the electric bus may have great pickup, and that's very, very, very safe for a school bus, because most school buses, they got a very slow pickup, so when you have to go out into traffic, that's very dangerous. But the electric bus is just like a car. It just glides right out there. You don't have to worry about getting rear-ended or anything like that. It's very good.
But we'd be pretty foolish to purchase those buses without also purchasing a charging station, and we've done the research on that as well. The charging station that we propose to purchase is a dual charging station that will charge 2 buses, allowing us to hook the bus up at night, and by the following morning, we'll have sufficient charge for a whole day worth of activity, ferrying the students both to and from school and to various activities around the community.
Sorry, this is the campsite one. This is a 50 amp charger. So this one is a campsite with a level 2. It's a level 2. It's 50 amps, and it charges the bus. But this will take about 14 hours to charge the electric bus. The other ones will take maybe 8 to 10 hours because it's 80 amp continuous instead of 50. And then the new ones that we're going to be getting are going to be DC fast charge, which will be able to charge in 2 to 3 hours tops. Take a full charge. At some point, eventually, there's a place right across the street, South Shore Mall, has no wall charge. You drive out of here, you go to South Shore Mall, there's full charges right now. A lot of malls, a lot of, you're going to Comac, so they're coming. So if you've got the trouble, at some point, there's going to be a charger. This is a standard port. I think they go J239 is the charging port. They're the standard charger. You can plug in and charge. The new ones are going to have a DC fast charge, has an extra plug, but even if you didn't have the DC fast charge, you can still plug in at level 2.
So let's imagine the scenario. Say we're on a long distance, maybe 100 miles away, right? And you take the basketball team and they're going to stay at a hotel that had an electric charging port. You could potentially, as long as you were there long enough, charge the bus on site.
So
you could use a simple system like how much does this charger cost?
This charger here is about $1,200. Okay. That's a small half charge one. The level 2 we have the charger itself, or the bigger one that we have for $2,500. But then you need the electric, the infrastructure to be able to do multiple like we did. But yes, you can. And there will be, there's more charges coming every day, because every car uses the same standard charging plug.
You said your larger new system that's coming in, what is that called again?
DC fast charge, and it's double the amperage, so it's 60 kilowatts, 60 amp chargers, which will be able to charge it in 2 to 3 hours, not real silly. If you do a full charge depleted, you can charge a full bus, one bus in 2.5 hours. It's just a simple click with a little port here, and you lock it. Our drivers do this every day. They get back from their run, they plug in. When they leave their run, they unplug. This bus will not let this thing drive away when it's unplugged. It will not let it start over. There's safety features, so they can't drive away like with a gas nozzle or electric nozzle. You can't do it. So if you try to move this bus with it plug in, it won't move.
We see another opportunity to engage in inter-municipal agreements that will allow other municipalities and school districts to use our charging station, and fortuitously, we'll be able to make a little bit of money off that. And that's just another advantage of us having our own bus garage. Interestingly, that bus garage and the location where we plan to put the charging stations is in the very shadow of the Glenwood Landing power plant that has long since been retired and used to generate power. I think there's something metaphorically beautiful about the idea of having our charging stations right there next to that old power plant so that people can see the way power used to be produced and how it's being produced now. This is forward thinking. This is an opportunity for us to make a difference for the environment and an opportunity for us to plan for the future budgets of the North Shore School District, as we think that there are considerable savings associated with these buses, obviously related to gas and maintenance.
This is the comments in my team here. Where we stand on the buses. So how old is this bus you're looking at? This is only a year old, this bus. So what kind of maintenance does this take in a year? What kind of regular maintenance? Well, we have to change the oil every once a year. And transmission fluid changes, air filter changes, fuel filter changes. We have to take the which is diesel exhaust fluids and the emissions down.
To each one lets it go. So you still have to limit, they go on a regular engine bus with that, and that's designed for these ones to cool the batteries that are on the bus.
So this is primarily cooling system, power steering?
That's all it is, power steering and cooling. So it's a small little pump for the power steering, and then it's got all the rest is just a coolant. And then noise generator, you saw that as a speaker, and you were looking at it when you were before. It's the speaker that you hear what it's on, there's a little noise generator. That's it. It's
So you don't have any team to open this option, do you?
No, there's not much. Like I said, everything else you do is standard. You've got a 12-volt battery on the side, so all your lights, everything else runs off the standard 12-volt, and you can use it on a normal large school bus. And then underneath is battery feeding swing rails, almost the rear wheel to the under the carrier, and that's where the battery packs are. So the electric one of the trucks. And that's it. Everything else on for that. And they all the other stuff they can probably just run from a regular normal. They have 3 cars for inverters that charge, so there's no alternator, none of that in the neighborhood that keeps the battery from falling on our truck.
We were asked about drivers and how it affects them. We have one driver assigned to the electric bus that has asthma. And since she's been driving for the last 3 years, has told us that she has not had an asthma attack. She said the bus is that much cleaner driving it that she's not having the problems with asthma that she had before. Which is great for us because we've had less driver downtime and less absenteeism.
Electric Avenue, and then taking higher. Oh, we run around to Electric Avenue, and then taking higher. Electric Avenue, and then taking higher. Oh, we run around to Electric Avenue, and then taking higher. EV school buses represent the future of people transportation. I mean, we're all looking at, the carbon emissions which are being emitted on a daily basis every time you have millions of school children across the country and, millions of school children here on Long Island going to school each day. What we have here is an opportunity to cut NOx and emissions from our local environments by the thousands of tons over the course of a generation of one of these buses. So, what we see here is it's a great way to improve the health of our school children, a great way to improve the overall environment of our communities, which we all care about, and really just an exciting piece of equipment that's going to, bear some very important responsibility in the next few years.
We've also had a chance to bring these buses over to our bus garage, and our mechanics have taken a look at them. And I'm really happy to tell you, I took a ride in one, and they are a magnificent product. I can't wait till the day when we can put students on one of those buses and get them around town. It'll be a great day for the commercial school district.
I do know that some of that was redundant. Some of it repeated some things that I had already said, although I had not yet used the words boogie, oogie, oogie, oogie. I want to note. I'm glad they did. But there's a reason why we did this video, and it is already, without even showing the video to anyone, it's already had some results. Last week, we met with almost all of our elected state representatives in what's called Lobbying Day. We had in-person conversations online with several of them. And within 24 hours, based on the pitch that we gave on this project, Assemblyman Levine had already dedicated an additional $150,000 in state aid. That was in 24 hours. Yesterday, I saw a copy of a letter that Assemblyman Montesanto sent to Governor Hochul requesting that $600,000 be included in the New York State budget to fund this project. Might not happen, but I was thrilled by his enthusiasm. We can't wait to send this video to people. We can't wait to send this video off to Governor Hochul and to the rest of our representatives, all of whom I know are invested in the product, but who also are in a position to help us with this. Finally, I've been in touch with Representative Swazi's office, and he's turned us on to a number of grants, and Olivia and I are going to be visiting with them next week to talk about further funding for this. It's a wonderful product. And one item that was kind of understated in the video that I want to bring to your attention, I don't know if you heard or not, but at one point they pointed to the very front of the bus, and he said, and that's the noisemaker. These buses are so quiet that they have to put a noisemaker in the front so that people hear it coming up behind them if you're walking on the sidewalk. I drove in one, and it's amazing. It is amazing. So very proud to be proposing this. I hope that it finds its way fully into the budget, but whatever we can do, I think, is to the benefit of the environment, to the benefit of our students, to the benefit of our employees, and to the benefit of our budget. Fiscally, it's sound. To continue, there are some revenue assumptions that we are making, and the critical one is that the revenue from the Glenwood Landing Plant is, we know, is a key source for funding, and the 2023 revenues outlined in just a minute are based on the assumption that school taxes from LIPA will remain unchanged. In a nutshell, LIPA would like to, because the Glenwood Landing Power Plant is closed, LIPA would like to see a decrease in the taxes that they pay. There are negotiations going on. Right now, they pay taxes. They would love to see that change. Obviously, it would be to our vast disadvantage. We are assuming that everything's going to stay in place. Certainly, if otherwise were to happen, we would let you know, and I'm sure you'd read about it on the front page of Newsday. So there are some revenue challenges. Revenue, again, we talk about revenue here as much as we talk about expenses. Reduced interest income, although, frankly, Olivia and I had a debate about that today because we have heard that the Fed is talking about some increases in the interest rate. So it's possible that interest rates might go up. That means we would pay more. We would all be paying more for interest, but it also means that we would earn a little bit more. So we're assuming reduced. If there's anything more, it's only to our advantage. A continued reduction in assessment and a shift of the tax burden from LIPA and the New York American Water. Absolutely a challenge, and I'll show you in just a minute an example of how that challenge has already been visited upon us in a way that caught us by surprise. State aid, difficult to predict expense-based aids, even though New York State has increased foundation aid. Don't know how long that will last. And finally, fund balance. We do have a continued balance, dependence on fund balance and reserves. And as you'll see in a minute, we're trying to use them strategically. This is a really complex slide you have in front of you now. And what I will draw, you can certainly, and this will be available, you can study it at length. The column I'll draw your attention to is the proposed budget for 22-23 and where our revenue is coming from. Where do we get the $94 million from? And what we propose is, going line by line, and I'm sorry, I'm working off of a very small light here, and I forgot to put my glasses on. That's even worse. Split properties, that is, we have some properties that we split with other school districts. And it's a nuance in New York State education law that if you own a home that splits two school districts, you get to choose which one you go to, and the one you go to is the one that gets the tax dollars. We share some properties with 3 contiguous school districts, and we earn about $150,000. Pilot peaking stations, we get a pilot for some peaking stations that LIPA operates, to the tune of about $2 million. A pilot IDA, $32,000. Wilco properties pay $7,454,319. State aid this year, a total of $372,449. That represents an increase of almost $500,000. That's the governor's proposal. That's what we've heard from the governor's office. And usually that's the starting point. That's the first bid. Usually that number goes up. We certainly hope that it does after the local legislators have a chance to have a role in the budget. Miscellaneous revenues, $1,800,000, down slightly. Fund balance, current operations, that is the money that we anticipate that we will have at the end of this school year that from this budget that we have not spent that we can apply to next year's budget, up from last year. This year we plan to have $1,206,000. And then we are going to start to use some of the money that we do have in our various savings accounts, if you will. One of those is a Marcelino Levine grant. Several years ago, 11, 12, 13, 14, thereabout, the district received almost $5 million to offset what was anticipated way back then, the loss of income from LIPA. I'll have that number and I'll share it with you in just a minute. And we've kept some of that. We've spent some of that. We proposed this year to draw $200,000 down from that. We received a bullet grant this year from Senator Gorin for $1 million. We received that earlier this year. The money is in hand, and we're going to apply that whole thing to the budget. We're going to apply all of it. Then we're going to draw some money from our reserve accounts. We have reserve accounts that we are allowed to keep. Those are set savings accounts that are dedicated to specific causes. One of them is a TRS reserve. You are allowed to save money towards paying that TRS bill. So guess what? This year, TRS went up by $500,000. We're going to draw on our TRS reserve by $500,000. Now, you notice that ERS went down, but we're going to draw from our ERS reserve $350,000. And if I were to go back, you would see that that just about matches the FICA, Social Security, and Medicare increase. We don't have a FICA, Social Security, and Medicare reserve. No such thing exists. But we do have an ERS reserve that can help fund that unanticipated increase. Subtotal of other revenues comes to $21 million. Add that to the tax levy, and that's how you get the full budget. That red line you see down at the bottom, we're still short, $156,000. We hope to see some more revenue. If we were not to see revenue, we would need to find $156,000 in savings. We would work hard at that. We've already found some. We could find more, but we certainly hope that we're going to be able to find $156,000 in additional revenue. So at a glance, the split properties I already mentioned, those are the districts that we get them from: Roslyn, Locust Valley, and Glen Cove. I list the pilots there. State aid, our total state aid, $6.3 million, increase of about 500. There's some miscellaneous revenue that I glossed over, but you should know what it is. Adult education fees, tuition-related services. St. Christopher's, a school that exists here in the district that has students there sent to that school by other districts for which we receive funding. Refunds, reimbursements, and rental of properties. Our fund balance, current year's operations, the Marcelino and Levine grant, bullet grant from Senator Gorin, and interfund transfers, those are the amendments I mentioned, TRS $500,000 and ERS $350,000, and the tax levy, the amount that we hope to raise. Now I'm told that this presentation is not complete unless I show a slide with ice cubes melting, and I didn't know why. I understand it way better now. But there is the slide with the ice cubes melting to demonstrate to you that the reserves that we have are melting. You know, we have less in reserves than we've had in the past. There is that Marcelino and Levine grant. And I'm sure it was said back in 14-15, but I will say it again, how much we appreciate it. Senator Marcelino and Assemblyman Levine for finding that money for the district. It was a total of $5,400,000 that was collected over the course of a couple of years, and that is how much has been applied each year to offset a tax increase. You'll see in some years it's been as high as $1 million. Last year, there was none. This year, in 22-23, we propose to draw $200,000, and just to project into the future, were we to draw an equal amount each year for the next 3 years and then a little bit less than the last one, you can see how long that money would last. And in 27-28, the total that would be left, about $132,000. So there's a chart demonstrating to you the use of that grant and how it's been used over time. You see those $1 million years back in 16-17, 17-18, and that's gone down quite a bit and then leveled off recently. The tax levy at a glance, and I know these are a lot of numbers, and again, we're going to be talking about these over several weeks, and you'll have copies of this, and the budget is already online for you to take a look at. There you see the last 5 years of our tax levy, 18-19 as low as 1.89, up in 19-20, up again in 2021, down last year when the tax cap was up very low, and then this year, 2.499. You can also see there an increase over 5 years of about $8 million in the tax levy, from 86 million up to 94. Now, how is the tax levy distributed? The concept that you have to be, and again, I know I'm talking to some experts here. I know many of you are very, very knowledgeable about this, but there is something in Nassau County called the adjusted base proportions. There are 4 kinds of property in Nassau County. There are 4 classes of property. Class 1, single-family homes. Class 2, co-ops and condos. Class 3, utilities. And Class 4, business and commercial. The vast majority of our tax levy comes from single-family homes, but the vast majority of structures are single-family homes. You'll see that this year, 74.436% of the tax levy will come from that Class 1 property. And Class 2, 1.4, Class 3, 17.7, and Class 4, 6.4. I think I said Class 4 twice. Here's what I need to draw your attention to. Take a look at Class 3 utilities over the last 2 years. Last year, 20% of the tax levy came from utilities. About 1/5 of our budget, 1/5 of our tax levy came from utilities. This year, it went down to 17.7%, and you will see a corresponding increase in what Class 1 paid over those 2 years. Class 1 went from 72.5 up to 74.4, almost 2%. Why? We wanted to know too, and we are still struggling with that answer, but here is what we have learned. A utility property was taken off of the tax rolls entirely, we believe, last year. Because it was taken off of the tax rolls, it pays nothing in taxes. But the same tax levy still needs to be raised. So therefore, if there are fewer dollars coming from the utilities, then that adjusted base proportion needs to be adjusted to collect that money from elsewhere. Because most of the money comes from Class 1, that is where the bulk of the increase went. Olivia and I were shocked this fall when we got many, many phone calls from residents saying, hey, my tax bill went up way more than the 1.4% that you said the tax levy was going up. And they called us, they showed us, and sure enough, it did. And we struggled with it until Olivia did some homework and found out that that $1.8 million was missing from Class 3. We have foiled the information from Nassau County, and we've received no response. We are working very hard at it. We're looking to meet with people to find out exactly what happened. We need to learn more. But the lesson in all of this is that if other utilities were taken off the tax rolls, even if we received pilots, payments in lieu of taxes, I'm sorry, I haven't said that before. They were not taxable, but rather we received a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes, there would be another shift from Class 3 to Class 1. And that is the concern that we have and why I've come to learn, and I know I've only been here 6 months, 7 months, but I'm already sick of hearing about LIPA, but that's why we worry about it. That is why we are concerned, because that would have a huge deleterious effect on the adjusted base proportion. I should also mention that there's two other things that can increase your taxes that we have nothing to do with. And I'll talk about taxes in just a minute, but those are assessments, which we have nothing to do with, and the assessed value of a property. So those are two other variables that may increase taxes or decrease taxes that we have absolutely no control over. A question often asked, and which we owe an answer to, is, so what would this mean for the average homeowner? If you look all the way at the bottom, the amount that taxes would go up. For a $500,000 house, $243 a year. A $750,000 house, $363, and you can read across. $1,487,000, or about $40 a month, and a $1,500,000 house, $750 a year. That would be the increase, approximately. Now, those are based on the data that we have at our disposal right now. People deserve to know that, and we're happy to provide that information. That is the overview that I have to offer on the budget. The devil, as they say, is in the details, but we would be happy now to retreat back up to the stage, and in just a minute, bear with me here. Sorry. Okay, are there any parents in the audience? Are there any grandparents in the audience? Yes, good. So I will never get this opportunity again in my entire life. And I'm going to beg the board's indulgence to make an announcement that I just received on my phone, that my granddaughter, Julia Joan Dolan, was just born. At 8:49 p.m., 6 pounds, 8 ounces, mom and baby both healthy and happy. And I assure you, and I'm telling the whole North Shore School District, that for years and years, I will be telling Julia Joan Dolan the story of how I announced her birth to this community, and the response that I received, and that Julia, and I didn't know her name until just now, because all they told me it was a Beatle name. And I guessed it, a Beatles song name. So thank you very much for that. That meant a great deal to me, and now back to you. Wow. I don't think that'll be okay. I hope you don't mind me doing that. Thank you.
Of course. So while Dr. Dolan rightfully just says hello to his family, I want to alert a couple things. That number one, we have some copies of the printed budget. Betty, they're in the foyer. If people want to go back there and grab them, we're going to all get settled back up here at our desks, and we will give trustees an opportunity to ask questions of the administration. So, Chris and Olivia, we're going to put you on the spot for which I know you're ready to do, because that was obviously so much of your work up there on that screen, to be answering questions. So, as trustees get settled in, I would just ask, we have a lot to cover tonight. This is a huge, huge thing. I want to make sure all your questions are addressed, so we'll ask them all, but make sure that they are succinct, clear, and direct. Who wants to start?
I've got one.
Sure. That's the hazard of sitting closer to me, but I'll go with Maria first and then Lisa. Thank you.
Can I be heard? Olivia, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I don't have it in me because I wasn't with me in front of me because I wasn't following. But at almost one of the very last slides that Dr. Dolan showed in the presentation showed the missing roughly $156,000 to make the levy whole, right? I mean, to make the budget whole. And I was just wondering. I'm just working backwards from the notes I took. If the grant that we just heard that came in from Assemblyman Levine this afternoon, or yesterday, from Lobby Day, could actually be applied towards that?
No, the grants have to be applied to the projects.
To the project?
Directly to the charging stations or to the electric vehicle, but in this case, it has to be the charging stations.
Okay.
Because that's what we are seeking the additional money for.
Okay. All right. I was just getting.
So what we are looking for, if I may continue, is the $156,000 can be made up with additional revenues. We haven't received the final state aid figures yet. These are proposed state aid from the governor. The legislature hasn't passed their budget yet. And usually the trend that we see is that the budget from the legislature is usually higher. So when we get that number, we will adjust our revenue estimates accordingly.
Great.
Olivia, I'm sorry. That was a good answer. Just
Thank you.
Sorry. Please, thank you.
May I ask one more? Or
Please.
Okay. I'm wondering, why is it better to lease than buy the buses? There was some comments during the video. Sometimes it was referred to us that we would be buying them, but I think you explained we'd actually be leasing them, and I'm wondering why that difference? Why is it better to do one than the other?
Olivia, I'm sorry. Is your button on?
Sorry.
That's okay.
Can you hear me now?
Now I
Okay,
can. Thank you.
I'm sorry. So what we are planning to do is to swap up to 6 buses, and we can do $150,000 times 6, which will bring us to about $750,000. We can't buy all those 6 buses in one stretch. So the best way to do it is to lease it and pay it over 6 years instead of going outright to buy it.
And I'm sorry, you said pay over 6 years?
Maybe 6 or if currently you can only lease school buses for 5 years.
Right.
The governor is also proposing to increase the lease term from 5 years to 10 years. We don't know whether that will pass, but if it does, we can structure the lease payment for any term. We have to talk to our fiscal advisor and structure the lease payment over so that it doesn't exceed the 10 years.
And
So
also presumably would not end up costing more than it would have cost to buy them.
No.
Okay.
It will, of course, there'll be interest income
Right.
included in it, but
Okay.
value of money over time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Lisa?
I also have a question about the electric vehicles, which I think are really exciting. One of the slides mentioned that the vehicle to grid capabilities will allow unused power to be drawn back to the power grid. And I know one of the slides said that diesel costs $52 and electric costs half. So I was just wondering if we have any idea how much extra we could potentially save in energy costs.
We don't know. We don't know the exact numbers yet. And to be clear, we were we use the state bid numbers for the diesel. We all know diesel costs more than $2.60 a gallon. So even if you look at it, the spread, we wanted to be very conservative with our estimate, and that's what we came up with. So it is likely that the delta, the difference, could be higher than what we showed in the slide. So I think we don't have exactly how much we will gain, or that how much we can sell the electricity back to the grid will earn us in revenues, because this is in its infancy and we don't know how much. Maybe we'll be able to use it ourselves, because looking at how this whole thing is going, there's a possibility that we can build our own solar panels and later on don't pay anything for electricity to begin with. So there's a lot out there, there's a lot of potential there that we can exploit over the long haul.
Right. Okay, great. I was wondering about those extra potential cost savings. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thanks, Lisa. Other trustee questions about the presentation slides? Miriam? Oh, no, okay. Okay, thank you.
I did actually have another,
Please.
if you don't mind. Oh, it's me again, Olivia.
Sure.
Also, I want to take a moment to say this was actually very exciting and a great presentation. Thank you so much. I really should have said that first. Very excited about it. Now I know why you guys have been bubbling for so long. I noted that we heard a lot from the purchasing person from the Suffolk Transportation Service. So this is something they've been doing for a little while?
Yes, they've been doing it for about 2 years now.
And they serve more than one school district, obviously.
Correct. They serve about 3 school districts. So their reimbursement is actually indirect, because those school districts contract with Suffolk Transportation. We will be the first school district with in-house transportation that will be doing this directly with the state.
Okay. Amazing. And the ability to take advantage of the meandering bus routes through the quote-unquote disadvantaged area is pretty
incredible. That's what makes this very attractive for North Shore, because this is the first time that other factors are not considered when they are giving out money.
Yeah.
This is the first time that we stand to gain $200,000, up to $200,000 for each bus.
Thanks,
okay,
Maria.
Thanks again.
Other trustee questions? Sure. Please, Sarah.
Maybe more of a comment. I did just want to also say thank you for this very thoughtful budget that you put together that really manages to maintain our educational programs and our class sizes that our community values, and what it's obviously a very tough budget environment when you've got 1.9 million in benefit increases alone and only a 2.1 million in the tax levy. It's very hard to achieve the budget. You did, and we're down to the last $156,000 to be able to do that. So we really appreciate all the effort that obviously went into that. But I also want to say that I appreciate the fact that I think this budget really reflects our values, that we're putting resources in the places that our students really need them, particularly in special ed. And the other value I think this reflects is with the buses. This is not the first time our district's made a sort of significant investment that's going to pay off in the long run. But this one is important, I think, because it pays off in the long run, not only financially, but it has a real health impact for our students and our drivers too. And so it's the kind of thoughtful thinking that's just very much appreciated. And that's what I have. I hope that last 156 is not too hard to find.
Thank you. Other trustees? Trustee McCary?
I was just going to really say something very similar to Sarah. The idea that this electric bus initiative really is so innovative, and it reflects, I think, what our district stands for. I mean, to be the first to be able to do this is a very North Shore thing to do, and I'm very proud about that. And I also think the same thing that you said, it's not just financially benefiting us. There's so many benefits that go beyond our budget that I think that we have to acknowledge. And I also was going to say the same thing about when we look at where we're adding to our program, right, in such a tough financial climate, the idea that we're investing money in special ed, right? There are 5 new staff positions, and 3 of them are special ed positions, right? ICT class, ILC, and the assistant director of special ed. I think it shows where our values are and what's important to us. And I have to say, I think you did a beautiful job, Tom. And congratulations.
Thank you.
And can I add one point?
Oh, yeah, please.
Yes. I have to thank the trustees for bringing this idea to us. Actually, this whole idea came from a district resident to the trustees. So there's an exchange that goes on, and that's how we went all the way to Georgia to talk to somebody there about electric school buses. And we decided to bring it to New York State and find someone in New York State who could do this for us. So it came from district resident to a trustee, and the trustee passed this on to us.
It came from Christine Lau, who sent an email to me, and it was just a random email, this whole thing.
Wow, that's great.
Thank you. Rich, did you?
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I just want to reiterate what my fellow trustees said. And I want to thank you for the really thorough, insightful, innovative job that you've done. It's very exciting, and I appreciate all the work that you've done.
I'll just jump in. I guess I was maybe starting off as more of the skeptic about the electric buses, and that if it was just for the environmental impact, which I value, to me that seemed more of a wish than something that I think we would really want to go on. So I was going into this somewhat skeptically, especially in this year when there's so many stresses on the budget. But when you take into account, as we've seen, that it's going to be a revenue generator, and most importantly, it's inevitable. Once everyone has to do it in 2027, there aren't going to be grants available because everyone will have to be doing it. But so to take advantage of it now and to build it into our budget, even in this tough time, is definitely something I'm supportive of, even though I didn't necessarily start there, even though I like the idea of it, of course. But it did sort of raise a question for me, which I think is important to the community. I think that in the past, I have had the sense as a member of the community that this budget is somehow, it's a pony for Christmas. It's everything you ever wanted. And so I think it's important to show that when we are working within that limited tax cap, the 2.499 hard cap dictated to us by the state formula, and $1.9 million of benefit requirements are obligated, of which we have no choice. I'd like to know, unfortunately, the things that didn't make it into the budget, where the tough cuts were made, so the community can see, and so we can see as a board, what it is that we weren't able to fit into this, because this is certainly not a full wish list granted for us. So what were some of those things that maybe were close but didn't make the cut? If you have that available.
Yes, I do. When the board listed the priorities last October, we took it very seriously. We listed all those priorities, including the STEAM position. We had administrators come up with all a lot of requests, including personnel. There was a technology position that didn't make it. You have a few, right?
So there was a instructional technology coach position at the elementary level.
A little more volume.
Yep. Instructional technology coach position at the elementary level, part-time reading position at the secondary level. We talked about an extra safety section and crunch numbers to see what we could do with that to find efficiencies. And there were some additional music positions that we spoke with Dalia Rodriguez about, and settled on the theater as the most important addition. And so those were some of the discussions we had.
And we also had some equipment for technology that we had to eliminate because of this. That will be deferred to after the construction. So all these things that couldn't make it doesn't mean it's gone forever. It's still on our revolving list. We will revisit them next year.
Okay.
So it's not gone.
Sure, just get that mic right in there. Thank you, Libby and Chris.
Yeah, I'm looking at the 3 pages of the things that did not make the budget. And in looking at them, I just have to say to some of our principals and directors who might be watching, the ideas they came up with were brilliant. They had great ideas. There were things that are certainly worth doing that may not have made this iteration, but they are still here, and they're going to keep bringing those ideas to us. A couple of more that I see, there were some really exciting proposals, innovative proposals relative to summer enrichment programs and things that we could do with kids over the summer for learning loss. And the board knows that we've also scrubbed budget codes. I've already seen some questions that have been posed about some budget codes that are showing some pretty big decreases, and that's because we think we can do things more efficiently. I anticipate some questions about a couple of those tonight, and we're prepared to answer them, but the 2 pages of budget lines that we went through and found the opportunity for savings. So this was not, as you've noted, the math is so apparent, a $1.9 million increase in a budget code that we don't control, and yet only a $2.1 million increase in the tax levy. We had to work hard at that. Very proud of what we did.
I certainly am too. I want to reiterate the appreciation from my fellow trustees. This was very well presented, and Olivia and Chris have been living and breathing North Shore for a very long time. You're not quite Julia new, but you're new. You're pretty new to us, and the fluidity with which you're able to talk about some of these complex things is impressive, and I thank you. Particularly that tax class shift, which is controlled by the Office of Real Property. That's something that's dictated to us. The fact that we're on the end of having to foil the tax guarantor for this district is absurd, but that's also the reality. So many of our realities, and the way you explained it, I thought was really helpful. Same as the effect on individual homeowners. We put up that slide because that's the pure math. If nothing else changes, but we all know. I think one of the big key things that you keyed in on is this tax collection is a pie. That pie is fixed. The only question is what size are the slices, and we're all a slice. We're slices within a slice. A very narrow band, the 74.4% that is the Class 1 individual standalone homes is giant, but there are many of us that have our own little wedges. And depending on what you do, if you put a pool in, if you take a pool out, if you expand, if you improve, if your neighbors improve, et cetera, this can all affect those assessments. So we saw last year, I think it was something like, aside from the shift, that with the reassessment, approximately 2/3 of homeowners saw an increase, and approximately 1/3 saw a decrease. We hear more from the 2/3 that had it increased, and of course, when that shift goes from Class 3 to the other classes, that also impacts it heavily. I thought you did a really good job explaining that, so thank you. We do want to, and that was a good segue you had to individual questions. I don't know if anyone else has any questions about the slides, or we'll move on to individual sections of the budget. Okay, let's do it. Dr. Dolan, do you want to introduce this section?
They're listed in a separate section in the agenda, if you'll see right after the discussion that we've begun. And I don't have it in front of me, but I know the first one is enrollment, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so turning to enrollment.
Okay, for trustees, that's going to be section C1 and C2. And this is both a report of current enrollment and expected enrollment. Which again, you explained, you don't know who's moving in here over the summer. We do our best to try to figure these things out, to see what kids come into the district, what kids maybe go to private school. I know in speaking with one of our principals, Mrs. Finder, she works with a realtor. She really tries to hone that number down pretty much every week, but it is a moving target to some degree. Are there trustee questions about the enrollment section? Okay.
I have one piece of information, and I know it's very early to ask, and I agree that you didn't ask the question because the numbers are not very helpful yet, but we've already begun kindergarten registration, and the numbers are, to be honest with you, meaningless at this point. But just to give you an idea that we do keep track, at Glen Head Schools thus far this year, 4 kindergartners, we know there'll be more, 8 at Glenwood Landing, 5 at Seacliff, but again, this is useless data, but we do. The reason I share it is because we do keep track. Catherine Miller, our registrar, who meets with families and does a fine job of being that welcoming face to the district, keeps a running tally, and each time we meet, I will have an update on kindergarten registration.
Thank you. Okay, trustees, so with that, we will move on to, no questions about enrollment, we will move on to general support non-instructional, which are pages B1 through B12 and D1 through D4. We asked for second little desks here so we could have like a little sub area, a third desk.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, it's still impossible. How long has it been since you've dealt with a binder this big? Oh my God, sorry.
So do folks have questions in these sections?
I just want to, yes.
Okay, well, I'll go with Lisa this time, and then.
Please.
I had a question. It's not exactly about a budget line, but about the narrative in the buildings and grounds section. I was just wondering about the middle school softball field renovation. It says that it's the district's intent to start this work in the summer of 2022. And I know at one of the previous board meetings, we had talked about the spring of this year. I think I recalled. So I was just wondering what the time frame on that was, if you know.
I know for sure that we haven't bid it yet. So if anything at all, I have to verify that information from John Hall. But what I know is that yesterday we're supposed to get $250,000 from the state, and yesterday they sent us a notice to apply for it. So it's on course.
And we'll certainly get more specific predicted dates to the board and share those at the next meeting.
Other questions in this section?
Okay, we're doing non-instructional.
We're doing general support non-instructional, basically pages D1 through D4
Right,
of the budget.
Okay. Yes, thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for. So, okay, so
Is your light on? I can't see.
I'm sorry again. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm looking actually at the very first line on account 1010.401-90 for legal hearings. And I'm just really struck by the very surprising difference in the numbers. I actually look back. I just want to refer everyone else for a moment to the 5-year expenditure report that we have in section E, and on the first page of that, if you look at legal hearings, you can see that 5 years ago, in 2016-17, our legal hearing expenses were $52,000. The following year, they were $73,000, and then they start going up quite a lot. You can see that on page D1. to the point where 2020-21 school year, our actual expenditure for legal expenses was 10 times what we're budgeting for this coming year. It was more than 10 times. It was $681,000. So I'm just trying to understand that discrepancy, which is alarming.
So just to tack on there, just explain kind of what that 681,000 is comprised of. And yeah, I think I had this question too, so I'm piggybacking.
Please.
Why we're only budgeting 60,000 when it cost us $681,000 last year?
Much of that has to do, some of it has to do with regular legal hearings for special education services. But a lot of that also has to do with the tremendous amount of FOIL requests we have been receiving the last couple of years. Anytime that we get those FOIL requests and we give it to legal counsel to look at, it is costing us tremendous amount of money. And we have to go back to the budget, find money, submit a budget transfer to the board, and that's where we pay them from. And that's why that code is at that level.
Which, in fact, we did tonight. The budget transfer tonight was for legal expenses.
Exactly, $91,000.
$91,000. So we know that in the approved budget for 2021-22, the year we are in right now, we also budgeted $60,000. We know we're going over that, which is why we had to do the budget transfer.
Yes, and this is only for 2 months.
Right.
So we should anticipate another very high cost at the end of this year.
Can I ask a follow-up question? I had the same exact question, and
Yeah.
I was just wondering are we able to charge at all for the FOIL requests? I know we had talked about it early in the year, and I wasn't sure if we were able to start doing that. And also, I was just wondering about lawsuits that we win. Are we able to recoup any of our legal fees?
On the lawsuits, if you're referring to the lawsuits that I've recently shared with the Board of the Commissioners' decisions, no, we do not recoup anything. The amounts that we spend to defend ourselves are the cost of doing business, and we cannot we get no return from that. In terms of charging for FOILs, absolutely, and we probably could do a better job, but I don't think it would be a lot of money. Yes, we could, and there's been some debate about whether it's that per page charge, or can we charge for some of the labor. It would be incremental. I've shared with the board before, and it's specific to this line, that I believe it's a public document. There's an RFP out for legal services that the board will be looking at. And I think this is something that, as the board looks for legal services next year, is a very important question to ask, to say what can be done to more efficiently defend the many questions that are raised and the challenges that are raised. Okay?
All right, thank you.
I do have one question on that. So is it ever possible for the school district to save money by hiring their own in-house attorney to respond to these suits?
I don't know. We could certainly, I know of other districts that have in-house counsel. We could certainly research that. I don't know if it would save money, but a worthy area of research.
That's an interesting thought. I mean, if we were able to, if I'm not sure how to put this, if we could assume that these years were aberrations and that historically, a below $100,000 budget for this kind of expense is reasonable, and get back to that, we certainly, I think then probably would not be worth having in-house counsel. But it's a really interesting question.
Certainly, this is the only budget line I can ever remember that was budgeted for $60,000 and is 11 plus times that. It's unusual. Other questions in this section before we move on? Yep. Please.
Not to belabor the point, but to put it into context, how that money could be used in an instructional way. All the items that Tom identified that we were not able to include in our budget this year, the STEM position, the additional reading teacher at the secondary level, the other music positions, having more room for enrollment growth. Those were all places that money could be put, correct?
I mean, I'll let them answer. Certainly not going to cover all 3 pages, but
No.
yeah, but obviously the ones that rise to the top.
Two things. Yes, it could certainly be used for other things that did not make the budget, and it could be used to lower the tax levy if we were not paying this amount of money. And were I in a position to make a recommendation, I'd say both. You do a little bit of both, save some money for the community and also enhance the program. Or, I've thought of it the same way, Trustee McCary. That's 6 positions. It's a lot.
A lot, yeah.
Other questions in this section?
Are we up? Does that include page 3?
Yes.
I'm like, what counts as a section?
D1 through 4. We're going
All
to
right.
cover them all.
I was going to add that I had asked Olivia about something on the top of page 3. There was an increase in that section of about almost $18,000 for something called Forecast State Reporting Software. So I'd asked what that was, and this is apparently software we need to automate all the data that has to be reported back to the state because of those reporting requirements. Is that?
Yeah. We are supposed to report information about every student succeeds act, as well as transparency. And it's like doing the budget all over again. And this Forecast software helps us to put the data together and upload it to the SED website.
Thank you.
Pages D1 through D4. Okay, we're going to move on to pages D44 through 45, which is transportation. We spent a lot of time, of course, talking about the electric buses, but there's other items in here as well. Other questions in this section?
Yeah. Hang on.
I'll tell you what, I'll ask a real quick one because I jumped ahead. Olivia, page, it's just a question about the bus drivers. It's showing a change from 27 to 34 part-time bus drivers. I guess the question is why the difference? It's only resulting in 106,000 increase. So I assume you have a larger pool of folks who are working fewer hours on average, so it doesn't come up to that much. But also, as Dr. Dolan mentioned, other districts are having trouble finding bus drivers. Are we going to find the extra bus drivers?
Interesting enough, we have had a steady pool of drivers, and we talk to them all the time. Michelle and I talk to them all the time. In fact, Michelle does that most of the time. And we don't find anyone. We haven't had the problems that other school districts have. And some of them drive in the morning. There's a period of time during the day that they don't drive. They come back in the afternoon, and we haven't had a lot of issues with our bus drivers. In fact, they are very happy, and actually they are very excited about this new idea of going to electric buses. And some of the people that you saw in the video are our own bus drivers, mechanics, and our bus dispatchers.
I know a lot of them are community residents also,
Yes.
so
Yes.
it's a positive all around.
Correct.
All right, thank you. Other questions from trustees on page 44 and
I
45?
think I have one, Dave, but I lost.
I've got one on
Oh,
45.
we'll go with Sarah and then.
Olivia, on the top of page 45 with 5530, 460 with garage maintenance.
Yes.
Just given inflation, et cetera, I was surprised that we were cutting that line by about 20%, that $10,000. Is there a reason garage maintenance would go down?
Yes. We install cameras in all our buses. We did it over a 2-year period. We are done. So we don't need to install any more cameras on the buses.
Okay, that's great. So you're saying the past 2 years had one-time expenses that are...
One-time expenses, we
Right.
are done.
Thank you.
Okay.
Maria, please.
So sorry.
No, not at all.
Okay. Olivia, I actually wanted to ask generally, if you wouldn't mind, just talking through this. We are on the pages that support the pupil transportation is one of the big drivers in our increase, right? We're showing that it's a 6.19% change from the prior year, a dollar change of 167,000. So I just thought it could be useful to talk through what accounts for that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with contract negotiations.
Okay.
So I think we can discuss it in public. Their contract ended June 30th, 2020. So we are 2 years behind.
In other words, all of our business is done in public, but just for the public to know, there are certain things that we don't discuss in public. For example, there are student matters that we don't discuss in public for obvious reasons. There are negotiations that we, as the representatives of the community, are going to be entering into contracts with, I believe, 9 different unions of folks that work for us here in the district. And obviously, it is not fruitful or productive to be able to discuss our negotiating position publicly, as anyone who's in negotiation would know. So that's why we don't do that.
Thank you.
Other questions in D44 and D45, the transportation? Okay, we will move on to facilities, D5 through D11. Flipping back and forth. And I'll just lead off with a question as folks are turning. The 2016 capital reserve was split into 3 different phases. Phase 1 was completed. Phase 2 is in work, but has been funded and is going. Phase 3 were a lot of the alternate add-on projects. If I understand correctly, those are that cap reserve has been funded to the point it's been as funded as much as it's going to be funded. There is no more funds. There are no more funds going into it, and it essentially the projects that couldn't be covered in there are back on Dr. Dolan's 3-page sheet.
Yes.
Okay. So there are some capital projects as well that are on that list of things we didn't get in the budget. Okay. Other questions on D5 through D11? I think going section by section, please, is fine. We can go page by page. I think it's better to go within a section. I see Sarah, Vice President Jones. Go for it.
Okay, I was looking at page 6. The line is 1620 45200. It's building supplies. It looks here like we're budgeting 25,000, almost 26,000 in this category, but that is really another example where it's just a fraction of what we spent in the past, right? In the past, one year was 99,000, another year 121,000, 64,000. 25,000 seems extremely low by historical standards. So is there a reason, or that's how much money we have?
First of all, that's how much money we have. But these are items we are specific on the items that are listed here. And this is what we got from the custodians in each of the buildings. The only thing that I recall was that there was a very large item for $16,000 that we had to remove and put it back on the list for this following year. But one thing that we always have to remember about buildings and grounds is we do have the repair reserve. In the case of an emergency, we can always tap into that. So they have those resources to supplement that budget. So it's very tough. And when we have a tough year like this, where other things like health insurance and TRS costs come ahead of all the other expenses, we have to go back to our budget and begin to cut things down and put it back on the list. It's not gone, it's put back on the list.
Right, because this is a list of literally nuts, bolts, screws, right, parts, things that
Yes.
we're going to use to fix things with. And I think it's one example of a supply line in this section of the budget, but there are a bunch of them that are much, much tighter. Like, to me, when you look at the section overall, the whole facility section has an increase of about $83,000, which is consumed entirely just by increases we're going to get in our bills for electricity, internet, telephone. That $83,000 is more than gone. And so it looks like we've tightened really severely in these supply lines.
And this is a very tight budget.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions in this section?
I'll just piggyback on that a little bit. I just was noticing, more broadly on pages 7 and 8, just how these numbers do they have a sort of roller coaster variability over the previous 4 years. I just wanted, I'm really just verifying that is largely due to these unforeseen costs we got smacked with from the pandemic.
Yeah, but when you go through the budget book, what we did was that when last year in 2021, when the board gave us additional monies from fund balance, those costs has been isolated in 2 pages in the budget. So when you go through the budget book, those costs were not included in the buildings and grounds budget. It is by itself. So you have to add those costs to the buildings and grounds budget for the 2021 period. And we are still, some of those purchase orders we held on to, they've been rolled into the 21-22 budget, and some of those expenses we paid in 21-22.
Okay.
Olivia, I had a question on page
Thank
9.
you.
I'm sorry. Did I?
I was just saying thank you.
Okay. On page 9, A 60 and 20, 467 00. There's 120,000 there for MERV filtration.
MERV 13.
MERV 13. Is that replacement? Is that maintenance? Is that large spaces? Just generally, what's covered?
No, this is really for the filters.
Okay, yeah.
We have to change the filters.
So just regular
every 6
filter
weeks.
changes.
Yes.
Okay, that's it. Other questions in this section? Okay, we'll move on to athletics and co-curricular, pages D42 and D45. And you can jump in while I turn my pages there. I know, next time we have to do these like sequentially, so. Okay, good. Any questions in this section? Based on everything we've said tonight, we're getting our bang for our buck on our athletics. I mean, and performing arts is in this section, and our clubs. I mean, the participation is staggering.
I'm sorry, may I?
Of course.
Okay. On 42, chaperones, this is just, I missed this the first time, but I see that we are budgeting for the Greenkill trip next year. That has not been able to happen the past couple of years, right?
Correct.
Does
So
that
we think it will happen. It will all depend on the pandemic. That's why we cut the cost down, and we anticipated that maybe some parents will not send their kids because of all the uncertainties. So you see that we cut it back. But if things get back to normal, we will increase this budget to where it has always been.
And these numbers are sort of what these are historically in line. I mean, they're not. Are we accounting for the fact that some classes missed those trips and we might try to make them up, or that's something we can't even really think about right now?
That's something we can't even think. It's a 6th grade thing. And I don't know whether an 8th grader would really like to go on a trip for 6th graders.
Full disclosure, I have a 6th grader, so.
Right. The Green Kill trip is generally a team building trip for the 6th graders.
Say that, I'm sorry, Marianne.
The Green Kill trip is a
Right.
team building experience for the 6th graders. So it's uniquely positioned for
Correct.
that experience, which would not be applicable at the 8th grade level.
Yeah, certainly.
But without any details at all, we certainly have had some conversations this year that, again, depending on how this year goes, Principal Imperial and I have had some conversations about, is there a possibility of doing something even this year? And we're trying. She's got some creative ideas, and they won't be perfect, but well, we don't want to let kids down. So no promises, but we're even talking about it for this year,
Thank you.
prompted by Jen.
Okay, if we are okay in this section, we have two more that are more general sections as opposed to budget line items, but there's a discussion of fund balance that we have really covered very well in the slides. But we want to revisit in case anyone has an opportunity, because that is a huge method of funding our obligations. Are there any questions about fund balance?
Well, I'm sorry, again, I'm just
Not at all.
jumping right in. So I just wanted to make the observation that when we talk about fund balance every year, we have at least two different things we can do with fund balance, right? We can return it to taxpayers, to use it to lower the tax levy, or we can use some portion of it, or we can use some portion of it to fund a reserve, correct?
Yes.
So at the moment, we don't really have any reserves to fund. Is that right?
No, we still have reserves that we can fund. We still have TRS, we still have ERS reserves available to fund.
Sorry, but no open capital reserves, for instance.
No capital
not
project
yet.
reserves, yep.
Okay.
Not yet.
So and any way we need it, it makes perfect sense. It looks appropriate that it is in fact being entirely returned to the taxpayers.
Correct.
It is being used to lower our levy right now.
Correct.
Okay.
Other questions in this section? I just wanted to say it's in the section, but not quite there, but I'm going to shoehorn it in here. The total number of employee lines is increased by about 11, not by about, by 11.4. Those 11.4 are not 11.4 full-time positions, but is that a growth? Is that a maintenance of current program? Just tell us a little bit about what's behind that and what we're doing with that.
It has to do with some of the supervision that we have to do, outdoor learning. We had to recruit monitors to work outside, security to work outside. And sometimes we have to, especially when they already have a job, we have to bring in scheduling for security. They give us their very best, but it's a very tough area to get people because they have other jobs. So we have multiple people. It's not that the number of people have increased, but some of them are subs, some of them are part-time. So it doesn't equate to full-time equivalent because there are so many part-timers and subs doing the same amount of job.
Okay.
We simply cannot find people.
That makes sense to us. Okay. Other questions in revenue? Sorry, fund balance? Okay, then I'm going to move on to the final section of the budget review for tonight, which is the revenue projections. Are there any questions there that we haven't addressed through the slides or through general questioning? Sarah?
I just want to say I'm very thankful to Olivia for putting together revenue projections. It's not everyone that does it. It is incredibly difficult to project revenue out the same way. It's hard to project expenses out 5 years, but it's harder to project the revenue. So I really appreciate that, and the description Olivia put into describing the assumptions she had to make so that we could look at it. So thank you.
Can I echo that? I just wanted to say that going through line by line just gives me a new appreciation for what you do, Olivia and Chris, and all of the directors, administrators, principals. It's really phenomenal to see everything that goes into making our programs as wonderful as they are, including, and I don't want to forget, non-instructional staff too, of course. So just thank you so much.
Especially Lois Straber. Lois Straber. I know she's home and she's watching this.
Thank you, Lois.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lois.
Thank you. Okay, folks, so that'll wrap up the budget discussion for this evening. Okay, very good. Thank you. As you close your books, I will briefly speak slowly, but I'm going to ask for a motion on action item 11, which includes several personnel actions, A through capital I. Is there a motion?
Second.
Thank you, Rich. And a second from Andrea. Any questions or comments? The only thing I will say is that whenever the district grants tenure to an individual, it certainly will discuss this and talk about their merits, of course, at the end of the year budget meeting. But at times, the schedule is that it happens during the year. So I just want to recognize Cindy Ellenbogen, who's a special education teacher who'll be getting tenure tonight. Welcome to your full-time permanent position here at the district. Bravo. Great. Any other questions on this section? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Action item 12, a more difficult one, is an action resolving to authorize the termination of a certain employee. Is there a motion? A motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All right, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. We will now move on to public comment tonight. We appreciate you being here. I would love to think that everyone is here for the budget, but I'm certainly glad that everyone is here. Large an audience as possible to see the nuts and bolts of how this whole educational program comes to bear. Every cushion of every seat you're sitting on is paid by something. Every security personnel, every administrator, every teacher that comes in and out of this building every day, the light bulbs, the drapes, the flag, everything is a budgetary item, except, of course, for the 7 trustees who are volunteers. But money makes everything else go around. So with that, I also appreciate everyone being respectful tonight and going through this program, even if it wasn't necessarily why you're here tonight. And we do have the podium. Where's the podium? Oh, the podium's right over there. Please make sure that the light is on when you go to speak. State your name, your town of residence, and speak directly into the mic. Does anyone have any comments? Just step up and get ready to go. Okay. Oh, sure, please. I didn't realize we had 2 mics, but clearly you realize it. Thank you.
How's that? Good?
That's great.
Great. Thank you, everyone. James Versacchi, Lafayette Avenue, Seacliff.
I'm sorry, James. Just go right. You got to go right up to the mic.
How's that better?
That's perfect.
Sorry, great. James Versacchi, Lafayette Avenue, Seacliff. Good evening, everyone. First and foremost, I want to thank all of you volunteer trustees for your time and commitment to our community. This is an incredibly difficult budgeting process. You are the custodians of the largest employer in our neighborhoods, and you impact so many people. So thank you for that. I know we'll have the opportunity to address this in May when our community votes on the budget, but in terms of some of the items you raised tonight, I think it would be incredibly foolish to not support the transitioning to electric buses, especially in light of the grant funding that the staff has been able to acquire and recommend to you. Getting ahead of the curve and getting these grant opportunities comes very rarely, and so everybody's going to be flocking to this, and 1 year from now could be too late. So I commend you for raising that and exploring that. And beyond the environmental issues, it's just fiscal sense as you laid out. And of course, that costs money, and some people may disagree with it, but in terms of future savings, it's better to invest a little bit now. The other issue I would say is this is a budget about human capital. And I think Dr. Dolan said it very well, which is that most of our budget is a fixed cost directed by contracts and making sure that we provide the best for our community that we can afford. And I thought your percentages and the presentation you made was excellent. I am continually astounded, although I try to not engage on social media, with the comments that people make about you who are all elected by us. I am offended by those statements that disparage you and say things that are ridiculous. And you should know that I think the vast majority of this community supports your efforts, not only when it comes to putting together a $100 million budget, $115 million budget, excuse me, but also the countless hours you put away from your family and time that you take to give to us at no cost. So that being said, no, there's a lot of support for work that you do. Sure, not everybody will agree with every line in here, but everything you presented was detailed and accurate, and I really appreciate it. And I will say, I'm glad you addressed that line about litigation costs. I almost fell down when I saw that you have had to expend nearly $700,000 in the 2021 school budget to defend against FOIL requests and really what I believe is senseless litigation. I mean, that is an astounding number to think about what we had to expend. And I will say I'm concerned, though, that your budget only reflects, your proposed budget only reflects $60,000, as I believe Ms. Blatzy said, she expects to get more than that. So if you're answering questions or something to consider is, how do you address that when you have a $600,000 shortfall? I mean, you're trying to scrounge for $100,000. How are you going to deal with that if these people or certain people continue to litigate and waste our money doing this? How do you deal with that? So I appreciate it, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, James. Appreciate that. Other folks? Oh, also, James, you said your street. That's fine, but you don't have to say your street. Just your name and town is fine. Sorry, there should be a little button right below the dial. Did it light up?
It's red. Oh,
there you go. Okay. You're on.
I'm on. Hi, y'all. I'm Melissa August from Glen Head. Good evening. I wanted to take a moment today to thank and acknowledge the North Shore School District, its board members, teachers, administrators, employees, and coaches. I want to thank you for creating our award-winning Blue Ribbon School, one of only 325 in the nation to be awarded this prestige by the U.S. Secretary of Education, to acknowledge the hard work of educators, families, communities in creating safe and welcoming schools where students master challenging and engaging content. I want to thank you for the Seacliff Schools ranking of 11th and the Glen Head Schools ranking of 12th out of 80,000 elementary and middle schools nationally, according to U.S. News and World Report's 2022 Best U.S. Schools ranking list. 11th and 12th out of 80,000. Let that sink in. I want to thank you for our North Shore Vikings County and All-Island Football Championships, 46 years in the making, a Herculean effort and feat, one that brought us unity and pride to the entire community. I want to thank you for navigating the impossible task of leading us through a pandemic. Ours was one of only a handful of schools whose K through 8th graders got to go back into the classroom full-time last year, and one of a very few who didn't have to shut down except once for an outbreak. I want to thank you for my class of 2021 graduate success and my thriving class of 2025 freshmen. I wanted to make these acknowledgments public tonight because there's a vocal faction of our community whose sole purpose is, for reasons I can't fathom, to use misdirection and misinformation to derail our community conversations around the quality education our children receive. I'm making these acknowledgments public tonight because I want us to refocus on what matters and move forward. We need to stop giving oxygen to the fire these unsubstantiated and refuted accusations, costly lawsuits, as you heard about earlier, and ugly implications are feeding. Their motives and goals are not about bettering education. They're about sowing doubts and fears. They're about undermining our award-winning institution and the people who run it. Their actions result in nothing positive for our children or this community. Let's move on from those who are trying to tear us down. Let's not be derailed, distracted, and hijacked by their tactics, which are being used to detract us from our district's incredible accomplishments. Let's refocus on the vibrant and grounded value of a well-rounded education that is a priority for this community. Tonight, I implore the community to rally around and support the core issues affecting our kids and not be distracted by the noise that's being used to tear us apart. This is a poor use of our very limited time, efforts, and energies, not to mention the psychological and emotional toll it's taken on all of us. Let's use our energies to raise our community up. We have successful, intelligent, well-rounded, college-bound children to be thankful for, and we have an award-winning school district to thank for it. Let's celebrate and support. If you have children in the school district, I implore you to become more involved. You moved here for a reason, because our schools are exemplary. Our children get a private school education for a fraction of the cost. Our teachers, administrators, and Board of Ed members work tirelessly to ensure an excellent, well-rounded, and enriched education, proven by coveted and illustrious awards and accomplishments, only a few of which I mentioned earlier. My time in this school district is almost done, and hopefully the harm being done to its reputation will not impact my daughter's few remaining years. But those of you with younger children have too much to lose. Those manipulating the narrative no longer have children in our school. Their children will not suffer because of their actions, but yours will. Please, let's focus on what matters. Support our children, our school, their education, and this community, and let's stop letting their tactics undermine our successes.
Thank you, Melissa. Other folks who'd like to share public comment, question? Oh, okay.
Hi, guys.
Hey. And I'm sorry, yeah, we do have the mask, please.
I have a few questions. Sorry, Renee, Monty.
I'm sorry, Renee,
Glenwood Landing.
I know obviously there's a contingent that isn't happy about the mask.
No, it's whatever. It's not about the masks tonight for me.
Okay.
Here's my questions. You talked about the superintendent search. Will parents get to help with the interview process, talk to the candidates, and have an option to discuss who they think is the best superintendent?
So the superintendent search is different than, sorry, is that your,
That was that question,
okay.
yeah.
The superintendent search is different than other searches. When we have done searches for building leaders, as we're going to do for the middle school principal, and Dr. Dolan, if he wants, can add in about that in a second, or the assistant director of special ed that was recently hired. Those positions are, they meet with committees of current faculty, administrators, and parents as well. The superintendent is a different one simply by the nature of that position. Generally, and this is generally, I don't want to speak specifically about it, but the folks who are applying to these positions are generally in either a horizontal position. They're either superintendents at other schools, or they're assistant directors of in central offices, and it is not. We will not get any candidates if that is the process, and that isn't how we've done it in the past. So now the input that we used was in the surveying and in the groups to meet with the with our consultants, which were voluminous, and we had a lot of feedback, and we read through all that feedback, and it helped us define that profile. And in that, the consulting firm, the search firm, School Leadership, they took all of that data, the first people they met with were us. And then they didn't talk to us again until they talked with everyone else. Parents, faculty, coaches, teachers, kids from the middle school and the high school, residents in the community who don't have kids in the schools, the Kiwanis, all the different community groups. And from that feedback, the profile emerged of what it is that this community overall is looking for, and that's the collective voice of the community. A lot of those things are things that we know, but as the trustees know who were there were some things that we did not come up with in our sessions that we said, wow, that, number one, we agree with it, and number two, that's really, that was really thoughtful of the community to come up with those things. Those made it into the profile. So that's that level for that position.
Okay, and my other next question was asking about the principals as well. So you kind of answered that. We do
Well,
get to.
I've that we sit back a lot more. So I'll let Dr. Dolan.
Okay.
That there will be parent committees, there will be faculty committees. We will actively solicit through the parent organizations for parents to come to us and serve on a committee. And if I could elaborate on Dave's answer, the superintendent, as Dave said, is a unique position. And it is, superintendents don't have tenure, they have a contract, and often those contracts have an opportunity to be ended in the event that a board is unhappy with the superintendent. And sometimes when a superintendent, it's discovered by a board of education that a superintendent is out looking, that romance ends quickly. And that's one of the reasons why, just speaking personally, it would be very difficult as a sitting superintendent to apply somewhere else and think that it's not going to be public if you're interviewing with a committee or if there are multiple candidates being interviewed by a committee. So what Dave said is absolutely accurate. I'm just giving it from my point of view. But if you're at the middle school, pay attention and speak to the leadership, the PTO leadership, and yes, there will be parent committees, faculty committees, and something we've already talked about, I want to have a student committee. I love having students.
I was going to ask if you could ask the students as well.
The critical thing with the student committee is that the conversation is entertaining and the conversation is sometimes illuminating and illustrative, but more than anything else, to watch how a potential principal interacts with young people is really revealing and critically important.
Is there any thought about questioning the kids now as to how the middle school principal could improve, or how they feel about what's going on?
I would think the idea of speaking to the middle school principals, the middle school students at some point in the search and asking them to describe, if you will, the best candidate or the ideal principal would be great. And I will work through the student government to see if that's something that we could do. That much like the board did, to collect that profile. I think I've never done that, and I think it's a great idea, one worth pursuing.
Okay. My next question is about the fentanyl. I had spoken to you guys about it a few months ago. We went to the CASA meeting. It was so informative. And I haven't heard anything about getting into the schools. Dr. Dolan sent an email out a few weeks ago saying that there were new updated information, but that was the old information that the cops and I think his name was Brian, had discussed with us months ago. And I just want to let you know, it really did have a huge impact for my girls to listen to him speak. A friend made a comment about a drug at my house, and before the parents could even say, what, my kids jumped into action and, said that's not funny and gave them a whole speech on fentanyl. So having, and we tell our kids all the time, wear a jacket, wear a hat, wear gloves, wear this, and then they walk out the door in shorts and a t-shirt in the snow. So, sometimes what parents say goes in one ear and out the other, but the fact that they had a speaker come whose daughter was actually, killed by these drugs had such a huge impact on them, and it stayed with them, and they shared it with friends. So I think it's really important that we get on this. I mean, this is something that is actually killing our kids, and we need to, I know you guys say you care about the kids, so let's get people in there to start talking, because they said the only way to get rid of this is to inform the children. And besides the meeting that I brought my kids to in CASA, no one's heard a thing, and it's been months. And that's a little scary.
I agree, and the reason I sent out that notice that we got from Commissioner Ryder is because I'm fearful. As a leader in the school district, I never want to get that phone call, and as a parent, certainly we live in fear of it. I've had meetings with CASA within the last 3 weeks. I'm very impressed by the organization, and we're doing two things. There is a project that CASA is working on to produce their own resource, and I'm going to leave it at that because it's an exciting prospect and it would make it local to our kids. Our kids would see something that they would identify with North Shore. But also Eric Contreras and Dan Doherty were in on that meeting, and we are still very interested in getting somebody, the right person, into our school, and CASA is assisting us with that. I would predict that there will be somebody in the school, in the high school, before the year is over. We have not given up on that.
I'd like to see it for younger than high school. I mean, this was 13 to 28, and I brought my 12-year-old, and I think it's really important to start young, as long as parents are okay with it, of course.
That's some of this is threatening, and I don't disagree. I will certainly mention that to CASA, and we'll involve Jen in the next conversation.
Okay, and then just 2 comments. I'm sorry, I know I'm up here for a while, but I know that there's a lot of diversity and craziness and going on, but one thing about the budget, you guys were talking about electric buses, and I'm sitting here trying to keep our head above water from this past few years with my husband and I losing our jobs and our taxes going way up. So buses may be a great idea in the future, but right now I'm looking at you guys and I'm thinking, are you kidding? You're going to raise our taxes for, I would rather see enrichment for the kids than electric buses right now. I mean, it blew my mind. I'm sitting here watching this. I'm going, you got to be kidding me. And it may be great for some people in this community who, I know we live in a place with people with lots of money. Some of us don't have that money, but we're trying to give our kids a good education, and that might affect people in a negative way. I know you said there's money to be made, but then Olivia said we don't know if there's money to be made or if we can rent it out. So I think that's going to have to be a huge discussion. So I don't think people are, and I don't think there's anyone in this town who really wants to vote the budget down. But I think when it comes to things like that, and people like me who are going, seriously, now? How about next year? How about 2 years from now? I'm not saying no completely, but we are still in a tough time financially, and you're worried about buses, electric buses, when we have our own bus system. So maybe that is something that you might want to think about plating for right now. And the other thing is, we do have great schools. I agree with the woman who is Megan, I'm sorry. We all agree. We have fabulous schools, and we're all on the same page. We want what's best for the kids. But what's best for the kids is most of the time what the parents want. And we're talking about parent choice. We're not talking about putting people at harm. If your kids are vaccinated and want an N95 mask, go right ahead. We applaud you. If that's what your family needs, then great. And if we visit you and you need us to wear a mask, then great. But it might not be good for our kids. You have to look at both sides of the story here. And I think we all want what's best for everyone across the board. And I just wish all this fighting would just stop, because we're both coming to the same conclusion. And it's all based on what's best for your kids and what's best for our families and coming together. So, I mean, I'm seeing more, when we ask for parent choice, I'm seeing people come after us like we're like somebody said, anti-science crazy moms. We're not. We are trying to follow the rules. We've been following the rules. The law changed for a day. We were excited. You guys broke the law. I mean, it just like, it all circles around to the last and final thing is we love North Shore, all of us, and we want the best for it, and we have to respect everyone's decisions. And we want you guys to be transparent and be open and honest. maybe take a vote and see where you're at in the community, to see how many people want mask, parent choice. And it's not just parent choice for masks. This is just the beginning. There is a lot coming down the line, vaccine mandates, CRT. It never ends. And if you can't have a choice for your child, we don't want that taken away. And that's all we're here for. That's all we're saying.
I thank you, Renee. I would say that I very much share your wish that there was a lot less fighting in this community. I don't need that in my life. I don't think anyone else does here. Anyone else does anywhere, frankly, like conflict. I mean, I guess there's some conflict junkies in the world. I'm not one of them. That's not why I went up here, and that's not why we do this. And I don't think that you're a conflict junkie either, or people are looking for this kind of strife. But I really appreciate you looking for that common ground that we have. With regard to the buses, I think those are very fair points you made. These have been very, very difficult times. Yes, I'm a business owner, and I still have my business. My business sells uniform components to the travel and holiday industry. Last 2 years, not a lot of people going on cruises and flying on planes and going on vacation. So this has certainly not been business as usual. Let's put it that way. Enough about my personal life, but I can definitely understand what you're saying, and I think that's why I came to it with that skepticism early on. And again, the community will have their say on it. I do think that what won me over was the opportunity to take advantage, knowing that it's going to be coming by 2027, that it's going to be required for all the schools, that if we can get in front of the game now and take advantage of those grants, it's sort of like investing in the bus depot. Even though the initial investment is onerous and is a hit on the outset, it over the long term will put us in a better position, at least from what I've seen so far. But that'll be, as you said, that's a conversation that the community is having. I think that transparency starts tonight, and I'm really heartened that we had so many people that are here. Regarding parent choice and mass choice, I think there's a couple different issues. You kind of talked about that. I think, and we've talked about this back for a long time. The problem is, yes, we're all, we all get to make choices for our kids, and some of them, most of them we can coexist with, right? We live in a world of different religions and different beliefs and different faiths, or different lack of religions, or all those different things. But there are some times, as we've said here from this podium, where individual choices of some folks do affect the individual choices of the other folks. And that's where it gets tricky, right? That's the hard part. And with masks, that has certainly been the case, right? I mean, folks feel like the line here is, if you're concerned about your kid, then send your kid to school with a mask. But for those who don't believe that that's what's best for their kids, I'm pausing because no one thinks that the masks, other than the pandemic, are good for, nobody thinks this is better for kids to go to school with masks that I've ever heard anyone say. But in the context of the pandemic, it has been decided by the state and the rules that we have to follow, that's where we are. But I will say that as that evolves over clearly the next few weeks, this is definitely evolving. What I have seen and heard to some degree is this, what I haven't personally seen is that somehow there is this board is somehow in lockstep about the idea that we're going to keep these masks on our kids forever, and that we're not going to pay attention to circumstances, or that we don't hear the fact that this is having a negative effect. For some kids, it's had a very direct negative effect very quickly. For some kids, they don't really notice, right? I mean, some kids will come home and an hour later they're still wearing the mask. But for most kids, they're not. And for some kids, it's really been a block. And so we do want to get these masks off the kids. And hopefully we can be in a position to do that much sooner than later. But we're not obeisant to the idea that we have to be wearing masks forever, and that if one kid could possibly get sick, that means we all have to have it. But it is a complicated situation in that way, and that, number one, the state has told us this is the rules. We have to follow what the state says. That Tuesday was quite a day. Tell me about it. Trying to figure this out, trying to understand what we're doing, trying to follow the law, when the law is, there's very unclear. We do rely on counsel for those things, and I'm not saying that it was a successful day in any stretch. I would never say that. All I could say is that it was we did our best that day, and it was a mess. Sometimes your best isn't necessarily good enough, and that was probably what that day was from a lot of angles. That being said, this is an evolving issue. It continues to evolve every day. This board is not locked into anything. We're going to look at what's out there, follow the state mandates, as Dr. Dolan said before. I did want to briefly mention CRT and other things like that. To me, and this is my take on that, there is a public discourse out there about those things that I don't see in our schools. I think if there are times when parents see a curriculum and they see something in our curriculum that implies that anyone is being told to feel bad or wrong about who they are, that should be communicated to the building principal, to the teacher or the building principal immediately.
It was last year. My daughter, one of my girls in 6th grade, came home and said, "Mom, why am I so bad?" I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "I am bad. I'm white, I'm straight, and I'm a girl, and that's all bad." And I said, "Where are you hearing this from?" And I looked at a survey that she had to take. And I told her, "No more surveys. That's it. None of my kids are allowed to ever fill out another survey unless I take a look at it." And then I lost my train of thought.
Well, what I just want to say is that is not the message of the school. That is not condoned by the board. Obviously, learning is nothing to do with CRT or math or anything else. My kids come home and present all sorts of things that they figured out from the day that we have to sort of have discussions about them and redirect. I'm not saying that your daughter didn't happen to her, but I'm just saying in any educational environment, we present ideas, and it's possible that there are things that are happening in some situations that aren't right, and that's for a parent to let people know that something didn't work. But it is definitely from the board level, it is not a situation where we are imposing those beliefs on our kids. Issues of kids being respectful towards the fact that we have a huge diversity of experience within our community is a critical value, and that everyone should be allowed to, not should be, everyone is allowed to be themselves and is fostered for what they are. That's literally what we're doing here. That there are some kids who are going to come up and be all different kinds of things. I don't think we're going to have any pro football players here, but those kids are pretty impressive today. There are kids who are going to be scientists. There are kids who are going to be fantastic plumbers that are going to own a whole series of chain of stores. There are kids who are going to hopefully go on to great things. And we want those kids to spend their 13 years here discovering what it is about them that makes them great, not in any way stifle them or what they are. So my comment on that is, I wish, in terms of us getting together more and being able to be somehow united more, that we can put aside all that noise that's out there and focus on what's really happening. If your child or anyone's child goes to school and comes home and says, "My teacher says that I'm, bad because I'm white," or says that I should feel, or bad because I'm not white, or anything else having to do with any of that, that is a time for a parent to speak to the teacher and to speak to the building principal and follow that up, because that is not the goal of what we're doing here in any way.
Well, I think it is a bigger discussion, but my kids never even mentioned any of this until it was brought to their attention. They never saw anybody as, everyone was just who they are. And they said, "Can't we just write on these stupid surveys? Why can't everyone just be happy and be themselves? Why do we have to have these?" So I think that sometimes when you bring these things to their attention, it causes them to look at people differently when they never did before. Sometimes it has an adverse effect, but I think that's a discussion for another night, because it is late and we're all really tired.
It is, but I guess I would just add as a final thought, while I wish that were the case, I don't think that the reality of our world, my take, I don't think the reality of our world is that everyone is all seen the same and has the same experience. I think people are shaped by the difference in their experience, their background, their families, all those different identifiers.
Absolutely. We just have to be careful how we go about it.
Careful how we go about it is true, but I think that I do think I speak for the district in saying that in order to send kids out into this big, brave world, whether it's in this little area that they stay or whether they go anywhere on the planet, that part of giving them the tools they need to succeed in that world is being able to understand that world and grapple with those things in these formative years. And so bringing it into the curriculum is imperfect and maybe not exactly a final science at this way, But personally, I think for a board, I think it needs to be in our classrooms, these discussions about identity and our society. And I do know that Dr. Z, leading our faculty, spends a lot of time trying to do it in the best way possible. And so that's our take on it. But thank you, Renee.
Thanks.
I appreciate it. Okay. Other folks who have questions or thoughts? I love the two mics here.
There's the button. Okay. Roger Friedman Seacliff. I think, she made some fabulous points. Just in my own personal experience, I think a lot of this is peer-to-peer. Some of this stuff is peer-to-peer, like my daughter comes home and gets mad at me if I don't know to say they about somebody, but she's not really learning that in school. She's learning that on TikTok. So I think we have to be careful about where we think our kids are learning certain things. And I am 100% behind the idea that no kid should ever feel bad because of who they are. And if anything ever got taught in the school that did that, I would be up here screaming about it. So I am on your side with that one for sure. I want to commend this board and the administration for representing the quote unquote gold standard in fiscal management. That's a quote I heard from the outside auditing firm at the last audit committee meeting. I appreciate your commitment to presenting the budget through a series of meetings that are open to the entire community. And if anyone misses any of the meetings, they can always go back and watch the videos. I highly recommend the budget boot camp meetings and hope you will have more of those, along with budget coffees now that the pandemic may be easing up, or maybe we can get into people's backyards or even outside under the tents like you did last year. And any other community outreach that makes sense. I don't think most people realize that only about 12% of the budget in the end, other than the big chunk of salaries and benefits, is really tweakable. So what you guys do with that is pretty incredible. I think it's also really important at some point to try and quantify and let the community know what is at stake should the budget fail. This community has built a phenomenal educational system for its children over many, many years. It's one of the best in the country, and the trajectory is only getting better. There's plenty of evidence to support this fact, and I think it's incumbent upon the board to clearly state what will be lost in that scenario. I know failed budgets have had catastrophic effects in other districts. Last point on the budget. During the last cycle, there was a big push from some in the community to misrepresent the district's reserve funds and how they are set up, managed, and ultimately used for their stated purpose or to offset the tax levy. They have said, quote unquote, use the money you have, and that LIPA, quote unquote, is a lie. Then at a recent meeting, one stood up and complained that you used too much of one of the reserves that they were complaining about being too big, and that you should have saved it for when LIPA happened. Now that I presume we're all on the same page about LIPA and what's coming down the path, and that we will likely lose more of that revenue, I want to ask the board whether or not it's time to consider, or if it's even possible to consider, putting away more money into the reserve funds. I know Jericho has about 47% of their operating budget in their reserve funds. We have about 20%, down from, I think, 23 or 25%. We all saw the ice cubes melting. But I don't know if it's possible to designate some kind of a special reserve fund or have the community vote on that for the purpose of offsetting that potential revenue loss. So I think it may be something. I think we need to do everything we can to provide future learners the same high quality educational opportunities that existed for past learners and that exist today for current learners. Lastly, as it pertains to COVID and masks, and I'd just like to ask everybody, I'd like to suggest that everybody consider that the board and the administration are not medical doctors or scientists, To ask you to make that decision on whether or not our kids should wear masks is to put you in a no-win situation. For everyone who wants the masks to come off, there is someone who wants the masks to stay on. None of these people, myself and other parents included, is qualified to decide for the entire district, no matter how strongly we all feel about it. I'm sorry that you are in this position when your main focus should be on educating, and I think you need to rely on official state or federal guidelines going forward. We have lost so much in the last 2 years, but above all, and most sad to me, is that we seem to have lost compassion for one another and the ability to put ourselves in each other's shoes. I so appreciate the work that our board, administrators, educators, staff, coaches have done to navigate through these last 2 years and provide an in-person learning experience for our kids. And I know many others in the community do as well. But I also understand that there are many who are upset with their children having to wear masks in school. I understand, quite frankly, it sucks. And I think, and I hope, and I want the masks to come off as soon as possible too, and I hope that, as Dave said, as the situation changes and evolves, and now with the availability of testing, much more ubiquitous testing and cohorting and all the stuff that we can do, that we can find a way to do just that, and I hope we can. In this uncertain time, our friends and neighbors who serve on this board are tasked with incredibly difficult decisions that affect the health and safety of our entire community. If they don't get it right 100% of the time, or if they don't get it the way we want them to get it 100% of the time, I think we have to cut them some slack, and to the best of our ability, as hard as it may be, give them our compassion and understanding. Can't lick my finger with the mask on. I'm almost done. There is so much anger, sadness, and confusion in the world, in the country, and even in our community. If we need anything at this present moment, it's more understanding, more compassion, and more empathy. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Roger. Yeah, please.
Just one comment, and I'll just be a second. Come on down. Roger, regarding that reserve you mentioned, in fact, we are working with Assemblyman Levine, who has assured us that he's going to try to enter into proposed legislation this year exactly such a reserve fund that would allow us to put excess funds towards that LIPA issue. Almost happened last year, as I understand it. This year we started early, and we think it's going to happen, and we have Assemblyman Levine working on it, and Senator Gorin is aware of it. And on a completely different note, I don't know if Renee is still here or not. So sometimes I bemoan these things. I hate them. It's like a tether. You never get away from it. Tonight it came in handy for me, but and I just learned from Mr. Contreras, who's watching. Hello, Mr. Contreras, that we are planning a fentanyl event at the high school this month. I believe the date I saw was February 15th, details to follow, and got a follow-up email from CASA right after that. So sometimes these things come in handy. If Renee's not here, I hope somebody can convey that message to her, because she's probably not home in time yet to tune into the live stream.
Most importantly, I forgot to say congratulations.
Thank you, Roger.
Good evening. I'm Cindy Pareka, Glen Head. So my question is in regards to the masks. I do know you mentioned earlier that the board will likely have to make a decision. The mask mandate is set to end. I heard something about waiting for the state's guidance. Why are we waiting for the state's guidance? The mask mandate is set to end February 21st. When does the board plan on meeting to decide, and what metrics are you taking to make that decision? I know the gentleman before mentioned that, no one's doctors and medical professionals up here, and that it's a burden on you to make that decision, but that's why we're asking for parent choice. And I, speaking for myself, am the only one to make the medical decisions for my children. So when we are talking about listening to our community, and unfortunately we are very divided on this issue, how does the board plan on addressing that, and what metrics are you taking to hear everyone?
I'll start with Dr. Dolan.
Sure. To repeat what I had proposed at the beginning of this meeting, which I had already shared with the board, is that next week I will meet with the administration and the principals to discuss the issue of masks, because I do want to get their input, to explore what a post-mandate school might look like if that occurs, and how we will welcome students back on February 28th, the day we return from the break, if the mask mandate is listed. The plan is I will develop some recommendations, share them with the Board of Education, and a re-entry plan will be announced and discussed at the February 17th board meeting that evening. It's a public meeting. I don't know where it'll be, but we will be meeting in public. By then, it will be clear whether the mandate is being continued, and our decisions can be grounded in that current circumstance. By discussing on the 17th, it will also allow the community to be informed, to be involved in that discussion, and prepare for any changes should they be in place.
Okay.
That's the plan.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Other folks? Okay.
Can you hear me? Is it on?
I think so, yes.
My name is Marianne, and I'm in from Glen Head, and I'm exhausted, as I'm sure many of you are, and I want to say congratulations to you, Dr. Dolan, as well.
Thank you.
I come to the board meetings to listen and to learn, and I wanted to just say something, it's not really a question, but it's more about, I heard you, Mr. Ludmore, saying how we want our children to be ready to go out into the world. And we always talk about the efficacy of things and the research behind things and the critical thinking that we want to instill in our children and the research we put into our programs. And what I just want to mention is I keep hearing everyone, a lot of the battling is about how people are going against each other as if one is better than the other and protecting the other. And I totally agree that parents should have choice. I'm not really, the masks are not my hill to die on, so I say. There are other things that I'm more concerned about. I kept my children home last year because I didn't think it was a stellar experience in school, and I wanted them to not have to be free and safe at home. But what I do want to say is that I really, really think that the adults are not being great examples of critical thinkers. Because if we just defer to what really isn't law, and we don't know our own legal systems, then we're not being critical thinkers ourselves, and we're not being a great example for our children. Any good doctor is not going to defer to the FDA or the CDC or anyone else to get their advice. So if we can't do the research, and I am a mom first and foremost, besides a professional, but I can honestly tell you that I know much more about mask health, vaccines, and our legal system than many of the adults that I encounter. And I will teach that to my children, and I know that my children will know truth. But just realize that the more we talk about efficacy and research and all these things, you have to make sure that you're doing it yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments before we close out public comment for the night? Thank you.
Hi, Lisa Cashman, Seacliff. I just have a really quick one. Just quick joke. If the magic number we need is 160, you know I can raise that for you, no problem. Just kidding. Regarding next year's budget, I was wondering, the sections in Seacliff School for third graders right now are 2 sections. I know this is a very granular question, but is it possible that we're looking at 3 sections because there's been a lot of influx of new kids in the last calendar year? I know it's granular and it's late.
You know, that is the reason we have that emergency section that Dr. Dolan presented for that reason. So we look at if it's needed overall, and if so, where's the greatest area of need.
So that it's not designated for Seacliff School necessarily, it's just a flex.
Exactly.
Right
We
now.
always do that because of what you said, because it's always so fluid.
Right. Okay. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you all for your volunteerism and hard work. I know it's late. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. All right. Again, everyone is invited, but I am going to say, going once, going twice. All right, again, thank you all very much. We appreciate it, and this is all live streamed, so your comments and thoughts are also shared with the whole community. But with that, we will move on to action item 14, which is approval of our pit musicians for the high school musical, Hello, Dolly.
Motion.
And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Action 15, which are legal resolutions regarding the annual election, A and B. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Questions, comments? May 17th, folks. All in favor? Aye. Action item 16, acceptance of a donation from Jennifer Freeman to the North Shore High School cheerleading team, which is going to be going to Florida to compete. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second? Okay, any questions or comments?
Just a thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank them. I also want to mention, and I don't know all the details, but there is also a clothing drive, I believe, tomorrow at the high school, or I'm not sure what the date is, but I want to mention it. If you have old clothes, please support that team. They are really doing old school efforts to raise money for that trip, and it's inspiring. So,
Dave,
I wanted to mention
how can we find out more about the clothing drive?
I don't know the answer. Certainly, it comes in every notice that comes daily from the high school.
I'll
I've seen
send
it a
it
lot.
to you, Maria.
I could probably find it in a couple seconds. Yeah, I'll send it, but I'll certainly it's all over social media. I feel confident anyone watching this can, within two, what do they call them, 2 degrees of separation, find someone who has a connection to that.
It
to that
is on Facebook, but those of us who don't have children in the high school don't get the daily notice. Daily notice only
Yeah.
goes to high school parents. So
I've been trying to boycott Facebook a little bit, so
I think someone will text you before this meeting's even over. I wouldn't worry about it.
What's that?
I think someone will text you before the meeting's even over.
I got it right here.
I think Dr. McCarry's going to tell you. I've been watching her looking for it.
Drop off February 5th at North Shore High School. It's a wonderful clothing drive fundraiser. Just clean out your closets for a good cause. The more bags you fill, the more money they raise. And they'll take gently used clothing, shoes,
Saturday.
jackets, hats, handbags. And I actually went to the website. It was very interesting because they sort the clothes and it goes different places depending on what it is.
Yeah, that's Saturday.
Yep. Yep.
It's okay. February 5 also has JV men's basketball at 10, varsity basketball at noon, and the play Footloose at 2. Busy day, but bring your old clothes and come for a lot of entertainment. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much, Ms. Freeman. Yeah, okay. You got a lot of use on the phone. Action item 17, approval to dispose of inventory. A motion?
Motion.
And a second? Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Action 18, A, B, C, and D, excuse me, which are for various contracts. Is there a motion on all 4?
Motion.
I heard a second too. Any questions or comments on this? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Action 19, which are board committee reports. We have a lot of board committees, and we have not discussed them in a little while. Even though it's a little late, our last meeting was even later. So I would certainly look for all board committee reports, but I would just, if we can, informative, short, and sweet. And
Can
if
I
we
go
can't,
first? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, please.
Lisa, you're up.
Okay, so I have the wellness committee update. We saw the wellness website, which is complete and looks great, has lots of resources. We talked a lot about our survey data from both Bach Harrison and Challenge Success. And with Bach Harrison, we talked about the fact that the most concerning risk factor for substance abuse was low commitment to school, where we were under the norm. We did really well in the more social indicators, but our struggles seem to be with classwork and engagement in that classwork. So we want to make sure all students feel there is value in their work, it's interesting, and their homework is meaningful. And then we talked about challenge success, where the major sources of stress were grades, tests, quizzes, finals, and other assessments, homework, lack of sleep, and lack of time to play, relax, or be with friends and family. And we talked a lot about collecting survey data on a more frequent basis, perhaps doing a pulse survey in connection with the end of year surveys so that we can intervene immediately if we find children that need that. So, and we talked about a lot of concrete ways of changes that we can make to address all of these issues.
Thank you. Maria, you ready?
Yes, I'll report on the policy committee first. Very briefly, we met. We are reviewing the 1,000 level policies. We're more than halfway through. We made several suggested changes, which we're going to review again at our next meeting on February 9th or 10th. I've forgotten which. 10th, thank you. Thanks, Tom. And hope to have those items to present to the board on the 17th or very soon thereafter. Secondly, the Legislative Action Committee met last on the 19th of January. We organized into working subcommittees, 1 or 2 people each, to begin working on the community liaison efforts, researching the status of the Superfund site near the Glen Head School, researching testing mandates and outdoor learning efforts that should be ongoing, reviewing the impact of IDAs on school districts, and we also discussed a review of the RXR development that I had given at a previous board meeting. And LAC is just going to try to formulate sort of a position statement to submit to the board as guidance. And finally, the legislative event that has often been referred to as the legislative breakfast probably won't be a breakfast this year. It might be an evening event. Is making great progress in the capable hands of 2 of our committee members. We've narrowed down to 2 dates in mid-March. Definite good interest from legislators' responses to be there. So that I hope we'll have an announcement on that pretty soon. And our next meeting is February 9th, I think.
Maria, if I could interrupt, that's great. If you could let the trustees know what those 2 dates are, and hopefully try to.
I'm sorry, yes, the 2 dates are March 15th or March 17th. Those are based on the legislators' availability.
March 17th, we have something on in the evening. We have tenure review, and it is the High Holy Day. I keep reminding you people of that. It's the High Holy Day.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the feedback.
17th, the evening is booked. We have we're working on the high holiday. Okay. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Other committee reports.
I have construction steering. I think Dr. D covered a lot of it, so I won't repeat it. We are scheduled for the replacement of the gym floor at Glenwood Landing over the February break. We are changing it out. There was a pipe burst, so part of that cost will be defrayed by an insurance, which is kind of a good thing because the floor was in need of replacement and we haven't been able to find the money for it. So we are adding a little additional cost to bring it up. So it is a composite floor, not a wood floor, because the wood floor requires a lot more maintenance, and the composite floor is a little, if anyone's been on a composite floor, it's a little easier on younger feet, and we don't need a true gymnasium floor like you would with a high school varsity team. The bid openings for phase 2 of the bond work was scheduled for February 1. Two weeks? Okay. So I guess we'll find out more about that for the next meeting. Hang on to your seats. I know it's exciting. The punch list work is hopefully going to be completed for phase 1 over the February break. There is a meeting with the architect to discuss the finishes for the high school selection. That's an all-day meeting on February 9th. Lisa C. will be going on behalf of the board. So I'm assuming that, and you'll follow up on this, Lisa, the last time we had the finishes, the architects brought them for, once they were selected, for our review and the public's review to the meeting. So it would be, good to have that again, so everyone could see, the wonderful planning that is going on. We did discuss MERV filtration, disinfection, and HEPA filters. I know, surprise. We do now have a list of areas that where we can replace or where there are issues about replacing because of the state of the equipment. We should have that comprehensive list for the next meeting. We don't. It's been completed. The committee has not seen it, and there will be some options as to what to do in the larger spaces, which are really very tricky right now, as to how to go on that. The financing for phase 2 will be done in June. We'll set out for those bonds. So that is phase 2. The fencing at the baseball field, that is scheduled to be done in time. We have some delays, right? Material delays on that.
The foul ball
netting. Yep. So we're hoping to have that done in time for the baseball season. That's the goal, and I think that is about it, other than, for what we discussed that was new, that wasn't reported on at the last meeting. We do have another meeting coming up. February, I have to look at my calendar. Next week? Is it next Tuesday? No, the week from 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 2 weeks, we have another one. So if we have more information that comes up, we should have it prior to our next board meeting, and we can always update the community. I did receive an email asking that the minutes be updated from our meeting on the website. So I just note that, if I know it's been a little crazy and we've had some breaks in there, but if we could get the minutes up for the public, that would be great. And that's about it.
Thank you. Other committee reports?
There was safety. I was late. I think it was Tom's fault. And so I wanted to know if Rich would do it.
I unfortunately didn't bring my notes with me, but we went through the minutes from the previous meeting. There really wasn't a lot of changes. There was no new business brought up. In terms of drills for the district, we're right on schedule, so that's going well. Employee training is on schedule as well, and things seem to be moving along, as well as can be expected. And we have another meeting coming up on the 16th.
I had a couple of things from the end of the meeting. There's always a lot of concerns about traffic and people running through stop signs. And someone mentioned that Roslyn Harbor was going to update a traffic study that involved some of the intersections in that part of town, which could be very helpful. They talked also about a shortage of crossing guards, such that they had to use, patrol officers at the intersection in front of the high school. And they were very interested in, if we had people that worked part-time in the district, they would be interested in an additional part-time job as a crossing guard, because they said it's very hard to get people to come. Nobody wants to drive up from the South Shore to work for an hour right in front of the school. And I think, Olivia, you were involved in that conversation, right? That we could reach out to people that worked part-time in other hours and see if anyone would like to be a crossing guard. And the governor signed a new law on lead levels in the water and new testing requirements, such that they're going to lower the acceptable amount of lead significantly from 15 parts per billion to 5, and we're going to have to test more often, which all sounds bad, except for once it did include funding for repairs. if you do this and you need money to fix it. So that was a plus. Well, they're not funding like the testing part, but the repair part I thought was good. That's what happened at the end.
All right, thank you both. Are there other committees we missed? It's not a report I have so much as a question, but athletic policy, I saw is on the docket to meet soon.
Yes, Mr. Lang and I are setting that up, so it should be right after the February break.
Perfect. A reason to come back. Thank you. We will now move on to old business, and I'll ask trustees if they have any old business. I'll just start by saying that at our last meeting, we had a report and discussion of student engagement. And I want to point out, I think trustees rightfully focused on what we're not necessarily doing to address the problem, but I don't think that we adequately acknowledged and recognized the efforts that are being done at our buildings, and to thank the administrators for bringing that to our attention in such an engaging way. Again, I didn't mean that pun, but or play on words, but it was engaging for us to see what's going on in our buildings. So many programs, so many offerings, and so many successes. And I think it's human nature, of course, for this board of people in general to focus on making things better, and to some degree that is laudable. But I think if we don't take time to acknowledge the good that is being done, something is lost. So I wanted to take that moment to acknowledge that right now. And thank our building leaders for putting that together, because it is impressive what's going on, and our students are certainly very impressive, and that's a direct result of the work that we do. Other old business?
I think I've got one. I think it was in the update we got prior to the last meeting where, Tom, you mentioned the RXR development at engineers.
What did you say, Sarah? I missed it.
The RXR development at the engineers club, I think Tom mentioned in the update prior to the last board meeting, that they had sent us something that had various assumptions in it, like, busing would be provided, there would only be 2 children, something, and I was wondering if we had
I will try.
responded to them.
Honestly, Maria is probably more conversant because she went to the meeting.
No, I know, and we heard that update, but you had gotten something like written from them.
I
right?
did.
That you
It
included,
did-
and I was wondering if we were replying to that. I had sent an email with some things, and I wasn't sure
Okay.
if we were supposed to reply.
We have not replied yet, and I will have to go back and take one more look at that email. If given an opportunity, certainly I've seen these proposals before, and they always underestimate the impact that they're going to have on a school district. Let me go back and take another look and follow up on that email. I'm sorry that I did not.
No, it's been busy. That's what I heard anyway. Yeah, and I think, and it reminds me, we're going to have to keep an eye on the IDA. I mean, that's always true, but.
Yes.
Other new business, or I guess that was old business, right?
I think that was all.
Yeah, that was old business. Any other old business before we move? Andrea?
I'm like
Is there any other hard, straight,
1 foot in
old business?
Yeah,
It's
one
not,
foot-
it's
1
not,
foot old.
doesn't have a toe in new. Then I think we're good. We're going to go on to mostly old, but a little new.
I just wanted to thank Chris for what he did in his report on all the recommendations regarding engagement, which were exhaustive and really, I think, really amazing. And I think a lot of the stuff that you wrote, Chris, addressed the organizational level. And I think we're really going to make a dent in our engagement and student burnout. The way to do it is through the organization, not through the individual child, because that's what the research shows. So I was really happy with all the suggestions that you made. So thank you.
I have to second that.
Yeah, here again. Yeah, that was a to emerge from that last session with something that you put together was really impressive, Chris. Quick, thorough, not quick in terms of like done quickly, but quick in terms of, I don't know how you turned it around in that time, but it was comprehensive and thoughtful, and that's what we're always, we come to expect that now. But thank you.
Can I say thank you also? I think it was so impressive so we had that engagement discussion, and I want to also piggyback on what Dave said, in that I think that even though, we were critical, I think all of us, and I personally was very grateful for the conversation. I think that the principals gave such thoughtful answers to any of the issues or challenges that we brought up. And they were so quick to come up with concrete ways of engaging our students and, fixing any of the issues or correcting any of the issues we have. And then to read your document with all of these concrete ways of, preventing the burnout, preventing the disengagement, instead of kind of putting a Band-Aid on it after it's already happening. And I thought that was excellent. I'm really grateful for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have to add my 2 cents. It's just, in the interest of brevity, I'll say I can't echo it enough, Dr. Z, and you and all your colleagues. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning Dan Doherty by name too, because he was a big part of that, and along with the building leaders. Sorry, Andrea.
No, I was just going to say, because it wasn't a suggestion of, we'll have a yoga day where everyone goes to yoga class, but then the next day the conditions are the same. It was something that was regular and ongoing, that was much bigger than just pushing in a one-time workshop, which the data shows just doesn't really make a dent in the issue.
I just wanted to say thank you so much. And we actually had a leadership team right after that meeting. It was 3 days after, and we got together with the principals, and we had that charge of, okay, let's work with that feedback. Let's look at the data, and we really produced a lot. It was a great meeting, so thank you for that recognition. We're going to keep doing the work. We do appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Other new business.
I want to talk about, besides the budget meetings that obviously we're advertising, I wanted to talk a little about our other plans to sort of raise awareness around the budget. Historically, we have several budget forums. You go back a couple of years and we would have, we had a dozen or so budget coffees, which it's probably not happening this year. We've often had to put out weekly emails addressing sort of like fact and fiction, and have consistent updates to the website. And I wanted to see if you had thoughts.
If there was anything shared tonight that was worthwhile and specific to the district, it's because of my teacher down there, Olivia Boatsy. I mean, I'm new to this, but she's a great teacher. I hope I'm a quick study, but Olivia and I will follow up, and we'll start to calendarize things. We're also going to use our community budget forum, the small body of people that we have who we hope become advocates along the way for the budget and can help us communicate, using the community to communicate to the community the value of the budget. So Olivia and I will get to work on that and start looking at the calendar. I am aware of some of the events that took place, and I don't know, maybe we could have some coffees this year. I think we should. I think it's a nice.
People like coffee.
I love coffee. Yeah. So we'll get to work on it.
I just wanted to weigh in and say the budget forum was really great. Olivia, I hope you can hear me too. I thought I was sorry that there weren't more people there. It was maybe, again, maybe needs more advertising or something, but it was excellent. It was even, last minute helpful, for starting the review, for me, for, lots of reminders, but I think getting more people there would be great as well. But also wanted to mention that I'll speak to James Versacchi about, our chairman of the LAC. We do have a couple of people brainstorming how to, do more community outreach, specific community liaison ideas, and maybe we can light a fire under that.
I love that. Sarah, when you talked about the various efforts to promote budget awareness, it reminded me of something that happened just a couple days ago, which was, and I think this is new business, but it certainly relates to old business in that we can't discuss ongoing legal situations here from this dais, but we now have this week 2 legal challenges to this district functionality that have come down in the district's favor completely. So when members of the community come to us and come to the podium and say, you're doing this, you're breaking the law, etc., we have no ability, because we can't talk about ongoing legal challenges, to say you're wrong and here's why. All we can say is we disagree. But now the commissioner has ruled in our favor very clearly, very unequivocally, on 2 things. One having to do with the way that we created budget awareness a couple years ago, 2 years ago maybe? Who knows? It takes so long. Either 1 year, I think it was just last year. And the other one was a very simple claim that the board did not see a budget status report, which we said from this dais over and over again. We see it, we approve it, and it's now online and everyone sees it. But even tonight, we approved the one from November, and we had to go through an entire legal challenge. But I think it's important to note that 2 of those legal, no one's here anymore, so it's hope they'll catch this on the video, or they're watching from home. But we had 2 very clear, decisive victories this week from the commissioner, and I'd like to I wanted to highlight that. Yeah, please.
If I could quote the commissioner, the decisions were overwhelming in the district's favor. And among the things that the commissioner said was that the district has properly produced and presented the budget status report on a monthly and/or quarterly basis as required by law. The board's meeting minutes reflect the board's adoption of a treasury report at the meeting and the presentation and approval of monthly budget status reports, which are available on the district's website, and the evidence refutes any suggestion that the district violated their budget reporting obligations. It was very clear, very definitive, and very affirming.
I'm glad you brought that with you. Thank you, Tom. Other new business from the trustees before we adjourn? All in favor of adjournment? Aye, let's do it. Good night, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Betty.